I would like to call the second meeting of the Sherwood Budget Committee. Would you like to call the roll, please?
Mayor Clark,
Here.
Susan Claus. Councilor Cook is absent. Councilor Harris. Councilor Henderson.
Here.
Andy Jensen. Councilor King's going to be absent. Councilor Kuiper.
Here.
Andy McConnell.
Here.
Mirta Meyer.
Here.
Council President Robinson.
Here.
Neil Shannon.
Here.
Brian Stetcher.
Here.
And Kurt Studer.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You all should have received some emails over the last week and some of the details that were requested from the last meeting. Were there any specific questions that wanted to be addressed as part of that?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Susan.
When we're talking about the PERS discussion, it sounds like from Julie's reply that we need to either direct the staff to. I thought that we were already going to have a PERS discussion, and maybe Julie can clarify this. Are we going to, or does the budget committee need to ask formally as a committee if we can have an update, excuse me, on the PERS, what our situation is with the PERS?
I guess, and I'm trying to figure out your question, because as a budget committee, we don't have much control over the issues of PERS unless you're talking about the possibilities of and planning for the following year. Is that what you're
Yeah, what I'm talking about is the upcoming liabilities, that we know we have some additional liabilities that are coming up, and if staff can, I don't know, somehow quantify that, or my whole point is we need to plan now for those additional liabilities and what we need to take care of. And I don't think that we can just leave it to the fact of let's just pull out of the contingency budget unless we know how much money we're talking about, and unless we're planning for that amount of money, so we're not robbing the contingency budget for something that is going to be an ongoing issue and budget question.
Okay. And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the PERS issues as they're occurred over the last few weeks have little effect on the 15-16 budget. Is that correct?
Has no effect on the budget that you're currently reviewing or next year's budget. So the impacts, which are unknown, no one knows what the impacts are going to be because the decision just happened 2 weeks ago. We have, as I said last week, we have 2 years in this state to figure out how to handle PERS. It's a statewide issue. It's a statewide system. The legislature thought they had something that would be a fix. It did not stand up to legal challenge, and we're back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago. Okay. So I don't know how you plan for something when you don't know what the impacts are going to be. Obviously, our rates could be higher 2 years from now. We have significant reserves. I don't know what else you would do actually to plan for it except to be aware of it.
I guess, Susan, perhaps the best way would be if you have a motion or something that you would like to present to the committee, we can then discuss or determine whether or not there's a second and or then open that up for discussion. So do you have something that you'd like specifically to try and address?
Well, yeah, let me ask this question.
Let's try and get a motion on the table to keep ourselves directed. So do you have a motion?
Well, exactly, but this question goes to the motion that I'm gonna, put, and maybe I'm not gonna make a motion based on Julie's information to this question. And my question is, if we know that we're going to have to go backwards and the savings that we thought we were gonna have in PERS, if we know that those are not going to be there, and it will be similar to what happened a few years ago, does our CFO, is there any kind of analysis that we will be doing, and what kind of time frame is that for this PERS question?
Susan? Yes, once PERS starts releasing information, they need time to work with the actuary to come up with an estimate of what the impact will be on all of the jurisdictions. And that typically takes a good 6-9 months to work through. Once we have more information from them, then I definitely am keeping track of this. I'm on mailing lists. It's in the forefront for me, and when I have any idea of what this might have an impact on us, I will definitely be forecasting that. And if we need to start making corrective action at that point because it's significant, we will. But right now, they have no information for us. I called and they have no information. So it's a stab in the dark right now. And I don't want to see us make a tough decision now that may not have to be made. We've done that for several years, and that's how we got to a 34% contingency, because we were doing that based on projections that didn't happen. And we're finally kind of back on an even keel, and I don't want to see us make those kinds of decisions off of information that is just completely unknown right now.
Okay, and you think the time frame on that is 6 to 9 months?
I would imagine that's a typical evaluation period.
Okay, so that would be in our next quarterly meeting or two.
If they've released information to us, as soon as I know, I will share that with the group.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions on the material that was distributed to the committee earlier? Okay. I would like to just take a little bit of a chairman's prerogative and remind everybody that we want to try and stay focused and get as much done as we can this evening. While we do have an additional meeting scheduled, I've been advised that there are several of the counselors who will not be able to attend. So we've got a full group here tonight, so let's try and get our business taken care of. With that, I guess we're back to continued on the general fund presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Joe? Or I guess that would be Police Chief Groth?
One thing that
Go ahead.
as the chief comes up, one thing we learned last week, I think we're going to do a little bit differently. A lot of the budget committee members were referring to the pages in the document. So instead of summarizing, providing the handouts, we're going to work off the document. So you'll see next to the chief's page 57, 58, we noticed a lot of you had questions related to those type of pages. So we're going to try to work through that with this committee. That's not how previous budget committee folks did it, and we were doing it kind of on past committee members, and we've adjusted tonight to try to be a little bit more effective with you in terms of sticking with things. So,
Thank you. And Chief Groth?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, like many of the other directors have done, I'm not going to read verbatim the information that was provided to you previously in preparation, but you have a brief division explanation sheet. And so at this point, I think what I will do is just call your attention to the last section of that. Everything else just explains what we do, the different responsibilities we have. The last section is what is new or different with this year's budget. And as you know, we're adding one police officer position, or that position is proposed in this budget. And the other thing that is rather small, but probably new to some of you, not new to the council members, is we have signed an agreement to be part of the Washington County Emergency Management Cooperative. And so we have a contribution of $10,000 in this year's budget for that. But, so with that, I think what might be most productive is to answer any questions you have. And if there's anything on that sheet you want me to go into more detail with, I certainly can.
Chief,
Sure.
go ahead, Murdo.
In describing the need for the new position, you indicate that this position will, or the new proposed officer will help reduce overtime. So my question is, how much overtime have we been paying recently that we're helping to avoid?
Well, we have historically budgeted for the last several cycles $85,000 in overtime. And that covers several different categories. We are, Julie can probably tell you, but we are, have spent probably more of that this fiscal year currently. And I don't know exactly where we are at this point, but we're very close and may very well be looking to potentially go over that. So the major areas of overtime for us are court, and then the other one is shift coverage. So when our shift, something impacts our shift, we have to pay overtime to make sure we have 2 officers on the road. And when I say officer, that's 2 cars. So it could, one of those 2 could be a supervisor or sergeant. So that extra position is going to strengthen the schedule, and while it's not going to, certainly not going to eliminate that overtime, our hope is that it's going to make a dent in it and bring it back down.
Okay,
Obviously, I can't give you a specific dollar amount because
Right,
I
no.
don't know.
that's okay. How much of this new position might we use to address the increase in patrols for the marijuana regulations that we've passed on medical marijuana and we're now exploring recreational?
You know, that's a good question. Certainly, any additional resources for the patrol schedule could be used to address that. We haven't made a decision what that's going to look like for us,
Okay.
but depending on you're focusing your question on recreational or both.
Well, just the need
Okay.
for additional monitoring and calls and,
Yeah, so we
everything else.
talked, I think it's prudent to address both medical because we just settled that in terms of the dispensaries and we have our code languages put into place. So we need to identify, my staff and I, what that looks like in terms of monitoring that for compliance. I think that's an easier target to address, right, and bullseye, quote unquote, to hit right now than the recreational is. There is still so much, as we learned in that town hall with Representative Davis and Senator Thatcher, there is still so many moving parts on that, that it's, I think it's too early to say what that's going to look like. I certainly don't see this, as I've said before, you know, July 1, it becomes legal for people to use marijuana recreationally, and on July 2nd, suddenly the sky falls. I don't see that. But certainly one has to consider what the future may look like. So that's a really dancy answer, but I don't know how to do it, how to give you a better answer than that. I think so. So any resources that go to patrol could potentially address that, but there could be other issues that we have to address as well that potentially may not be patrol, that are more investigative or more support in nature. There could be, we certainly would like to ramp up some of our efforts in the schools as well to to really attack the front end of this. So while it's legal for anybody over 21, it's still very illegal for anybody under 21. And the most, the biggest population of group that we're most concerned with regard to that, of course, is our students, our school kids. So we're going to want to look at what we can do with the YSAT and look at increasing the education and really making sure that our kiddos know that you need to wait till you're 21 and then make the decision whether or not you're going to partake, as it were.
Yes. I have one final follow-up question. To adding a position, are we talking about, we just swore in an officer recently, and he has to go through school, or officer school, whatever. That's not the position that we're funding. We're funding an additional
Correct.
above that one, correct? Okay.
Correct. The officer that y'all on council just swore in was a replacement position for one we
Okay.
lost. We are preparing to fill a second replacement position for one that we lost, so you will have another one to swear in, hopefully before too awful long.
Okay.
And that, so again, those are positions due to attrition. And so the position we're talking about then is an additional one that will come later on in the summer.
Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
obviously after July 1 at some point.
And I have a question too, Chief. Currently, how much time does the school resource officer spend with the schools? And will this additional position affect that at all in a positive way?
Second question is quicker to answer, and that is no. This position, well, let me take that back. It will.
Okay.
This position is going to strengthen the patrol schedule, and where we're weakest is on day shift, and so our SRO at times does have to help cover patrol. So if we strengthen that schedule, our SRO should be freed up more to be in the school. The last study we checked, we ran, our SRO spends about 85% of his time in the schools. So he's assigned to the school by the agreement during the school year. So during the summer, he's not assigned to the school district.
Okay.
So he does spend a good majority of his time dealing with school-related issues. He may not necessarily physically be in the high school, but he's dealing with school-related issues. But it's all of that time. We've not run the numbers, but I would be very comfortable to say that it's probably 95% or plus of his time is all high school related. He has very little time to do anything in the middle schools or certainly any of the elementary schools.
And then another follow-up question, given the demographics, I mean, every city is different with their demographics and what the needs are, but I was just doing some quick research online a few nights ago, and a city of about 19 or 20,000 typically has 32, 33 officers. Have you heard what statistics are on that?
Well, yeah, that's a.
Is that just throwing numbers around?
I think
wanna
what you're
try to
referring,
keep
yeah,
it
what you're
down to
referring
context.
to is a population-based staffing model,
Okay.
which most experts will tell you are not a way that a community should plan or a police department should plan on how they should staff their community. So it's really a community question, and we have talked about the population-based model in the past, but purely, and I've tried to be very careful to say that this is purely from a comparative perspective. So you just have some idea.
Right.
And so every community is different. There was just an article in the paper this morning about Portland being understaffed. And so when you think about, compared to other big cities, so they were using those officer to citizen ratios. So comparatively speaking, I can tell you that based on like-sized cities in Oregon, yeah, we are staffed lower than they are. But again, that should only be used just for pure comparative. It shouldn't be used as a basis to form a decision that says, well, because that's what the national average is, or that's what the average in like cities in Oregon is, that's where we should be.
Understood. Okay.
That would be totally inappropriate.
And I'm assuming that, that we're having a study that's funded, a study coming out this year that will help sort of put some of that in perspective moving forward.
Well, there's money budgeted in this
We're doing
budget
that.
for that staffing
Okay.
study, and I'll just elaborate on that. The Police Advisory Board, they meet tomorrow night, in fact, for their May meeting, and they are beginning and will be beginning with Councilor Henderson that process of that conversation of getting out into the community and really determining what it is the community is looking for.
Andy, I think you had a question?
Yeah, the $10,000 other equipment, is that Washington County cooperative that you mentioned?
Can you tell me what page you're on so I know exactly?
57? And what I was wondering is, what do we get from that? What are the benefits of being part of that cooperative?
Okay, so a couple questions. The 10,000 is capital outlay, and that's a radar trailer.
Okay.
So we have one radar trailer that's operational, and that thing is hopping. We get I can't think of the exact number, but over 100 traffic complaints on an annual basis, and many of them can be addressed through education and just kind of opening motorists' eyes about how fast they're going. That radar trailer is a great tool, but it runs on a battery, and we put it out there, and the more traffic there is, the quicker it dies. So exactly. And so we need another one, and we'll have that second one going. And the beauty with the second one is it has some solar panels that will help keep the batteries a little bit longer. So that's what that 10,000 is. What do we get for joining the cooperative? We get economy of scale. There's certain things in this business that you just flat do better when you regionalize or you're part of a larger group rather than going on your own. And for the sake of time, I won't get into a history lesson with emergency management in Sherwood, but for the last 8 years, it's been a good history, and we're at the point now where, as a as a community and as a city staff, I feel pretty good about where we are, and I think now is the right time to be a part of this cooperative and get more from the resources of other agencies that are part of it. So we'll get their expertise, we'll get their assistance in exercises, we'll get just the value of being part of that
Is it
group.
a sharing of equipment, or is it, like you said,
It may be,
expertise
yeah,
in that?
absolutely. It could be.
Okay. I didn't know if there were certain large pieces of equipment that the cooperative purchased and then it was used wherever it was needed, that type of thing.
No, the cooperative would not itself make those purchases, but certainly agencies that are part of the cooperative may. And by sake of being joined with them, that would certainly strengthen
Have
our
access
position
them.
to,
Okay.
excuse me, to maybe gain a benefit of that. So,
I have two things I'd like to just say. I think it is absolutely remarkable that for fiscal year 15-16, you have budgeted less than a 3% increase over the current year. So, including a full-time officer, I think that's fantastic. And the other thing I'd like to say is that within the staffing study that you propose to complete, is there going to be, do you intend to have a conversation about potentially a volunteer cadet type program within the community? And to piggyback that line of thinking, might there be an opportunity to engage the community in a more formalized community policing presence within Sherwood?
yeah, I think we are doing as much as we possibly can to expand our use of volunteers, and we'll continue to do that. One of my concerns is that when you talk about a potential cadet type program or reserve program, Sherwood has had a reserve program, is very fond of reserve program, but we lost them all either through hiring or going somewhere else or whatever. And the problem with reserves, not the problem, but one of my concerns with reserves is they have to be managed properly. I've seen them be really effective when they're managed well, and I've also seen them be ineffective and be an absolute drain on time and resources because they're not managed well, and then they end up costing more than benefit that they bring. So That's quite honestly my concern is I want to make sure that we're in a position to manage it well. In terms of the community policing, again, that's something else that I really want to open up and try to get to the point where we have a community academy and do some of those things. We are taking the steps we can to have a better level of community engagement, which I think is related to that. So I think we're taking some steps there, but we're not yet at the point where I think we're ready to tackle Community Academy. And just to be frank with you, every budget has a limit. I put in for the police officer position, and I also put in for another administrative position that had that one been able to be funded, we would have been able to logistically launch some of these things that we're talking about. And then I'll add more on the staffing study. So that process, we have the Police Advisory Board that is a tremendous group of folks. And so that's really the staffing study is funded. And that's really going to be their charge. And we're going to talk, as I said, we're going to begin talking about that tomorrow night. But that's going to be their charge to how do we go about engaging the community relative to police services? Because for me, the answer, the question needs to go to the community, and the community needs to answer the question. What do they want it to look like in Sherwood? What are their expectations? What levels of service do they want? What levels of service are they willing to pay for? And so that process is beginning, and as a part of that process, the Police Advisory Board may say, hey, let's do this staffing study. There's other options they can do. There's, they can try to do a survey. They can do lots of things. And to be fair, the staffing study actually, idea was, came up, I don't know, a year and a half probably ago, during very similar conversations. So it's something that we have in the queue ready to go, and the Police Advisory Board, as I said, is the group that's going to wrestle with that. So.
And also, Chief, don't we also have a volunteer manager who's going to coordinate emergency management and get the community more involved in that aspect? Didn't we have a presentation on that in council?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, Mr. Stone, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, we do. We do have a gentleman that lives in our community that he probably wouldn't want me to say this, but I'll say if he's not an expert, he's as close as I think I've seen in the field of emergency management. And so he has already helped us a tremendous amount. He was at our last exercise, which was last week or the week before last week, and observed. And for the benefit of all staff that's here, they all deserve a pat on the back because he and I sat and observed, and he said, man, I'll tell you, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with how this group got the EOC going and how they tackled everything. So it just speaks to how your city staff has really jumped on emergency management and got themselves ready. It's an ongoing process. But so in specific to emergency management, he's going to help us out an awful lot. So that'll be good.
And he's free.
Yes.
Okay, Chief, I've got kind of two questions for you. Just kind of as a background from the benefit of being on last year's budget committee, I know that we had talked about manpower and staffing at that time. One of the concerns was that we had two fairly large retail outlets opening up, and we didn't have a lot of history on them at the time. Had been some concerns about having to transport individuals from here all the way out to the jail if necessary. With the history you've had for the last year, any questions or problems with those new retail outlets?
No questions. They have both, we have one new one, obviously the Parkway Village, is that what it's called? So that center is new. And obviously the largest tenant there, Walmart, has been outstanding. We were meeting with loss prevention long before the doors opened, and we have a great relationship with them, and we're constantly working on how we address the theft there. They want to make sure that their staff address it in a way that works for us and the prosecutors. So from that perspective, it's been wonderful. We have that kind of existing relationship with the other retail outlets. The newest one prior to Parkway Village and Walmart, of course, was Kohl's. They've been outstanding. And then we have our existing ones. In terms of demand, I can tell you that they are our biggest, all those retail centers, including our grocery stores. When I look at the numbers and break them down, they are our biggest users, I guess, or in terms of where are we the most, where are the police officers responding to the most, it's those retail centers. Now, for our newest one, we only have half a year data, so you can't really draw a fair comparison. But
So far, you've got the manpower to be able to deal with it.
yeah, we there hasn't been any issues with us, and let me expand that to a broader picture. This is what's interesting about the position that I'm in is when we put our officers out on the street, whether it's two or certainly with two, and even with if on those occasions when we have three out, we don't have issues handling the calls. The quote unquote phone is not ringing off the hook. You know, people are not having to wait for us to respond. Our response times are outstanding. So that's not the issue. The issue is our ability to have a schedule that is sustainable without having to call, post for overtime, without having to rob Peter to pay Paul to make sure we have folks out on the road. So once we get them out on the road, there's no issue there. It's not a matter of, obviously this is a safe community. It's not a matter of, man, we're jumping from call to call and there's shots ringing out. I mean, that's not it. Everything's fine on that front. It's the sustainability of the schedule. And, overtime is there for things that are not planned for. I'd like to use our overtime budget for special events and things that are going to really benefit the community. But you can get to a point where people are working too much overtime. And that as you mentioned in the previous discussions, one of the points that came up in last year's budget discussion was the work-life balance. And that's a concern. You want to make sure that people have an appropriate balance, or you're going to burn them out. There's going to be fatigue issues, and let's face it. When we put them out there, they need to be focused and they need to be ready to go. So,
And then the other question I had for you, and probably one that affects our citizenship more than anything else, is code compliance. Barking dogs, abandoned vehicles, things like that. I think right now you have, a half-time code compliance officer?
yes. So we have a position that is, I guess the title is Code Compliance / Evidence Technician. We will actually probably retitle that to just title only, Community Service Officer, to better capture a lot of the stuff that he's doing. But yeah, on the books, it's a half-time code compliance officer. But the reality of his job is he answers the demand. So there are certain times in the season where code compliance is a big deal, and we get a lot of call about, say, signs or any number of different things. And then there's other times when there's not that great a demand, and he may have evidence issues that he has to deal with. We're very focused and very specific about how we handle our property evidence. There's monthly audits that are done, and there's a large-scale annual audit that's done. That's all part of our accreditation and best practice stuff. So he kicks his time back and forth as the need arises.
And I will concur that I think you've done an excellent job trying to control your budget, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
So I have a couple questions. You said a couple things that were actually in complete opposition to each other, so I was wanting a clarification. So you initially said that the staffing study was budgeted, and then later on in the discussion, you said that the Police Advisory Committee was going to be talking about the staffing study and deciding whether you were going to go for the staffing study recommendation or you're going to recommend a myriad of other things. So which one is it?
So the staffing study, there's $20,000 in this budget that is titled staffing study. that whole conversation is what the Police Advisory Board is going to deal with. I will tell them tomorrow night, if for those that don't know already, that there is $20,000 in this year's budget for a staffing study. But I look at them as the group that is tasked with how do they want to move forward on getting that community engagement. I mean, they may very well say, hey, well, let's do that. They may say, you know, they may come up with any recommendation they want, but so I certainly wasn't intending to have a contradiction, but I don't think that it would be fair to the Police Advisory Board to necessarily just launch a staffing study without allowing them to weigh in on that grand conversation. I mean, they could potentially go out and discuss it and get some feedback, and conceivably they could come back in a month and say, Chief, the feedback we're getting is stay pat, and so let's not do anything. I mean, conceivably.
And
I
then
mean,
that
that's the
recommendation would come
approach.
to us,
Yeah.
to council.
Right. So, I mean, that's I'm trying to stay open. So, forgive me, I wasn't saying that, hey, we may not do that. I'm just staying open out of deference to the Police Advisory Board because they're really the ones that need to chew on that. But, yeah, it's there. It's ready to go. I mean, in terms of the money.
I just, thank you, that
Yes.
very much clarifies it, because I just
Good.
heard I'm like, wait a minute, which one is it?
Yeah.
So that absolutely clarifies it, thank you. So I also had another question on the overtime amount that might be a question that needs to be answered, you know, later on, but, or research and then come back. We had $85,000 in budgeted, and so we used about that, and that was this season. So in the last 4 years, how much overtime have we used? So could I get that answer? That'd be great.
That is what we typically use.
Oh, it is? Okay,
Yes.
so that's what we budget, and that's what we normally use, and that is sort of the pattern of what
Yes.
we've done. Could you tell me a range of what a full-time patrolman would cost, you know, with the benefits and full-time? You're proposing a full-time.
Yeah, and I think the numbers in this budget are 93 and change.
Okay.
Fully loaded, all benefits,
and-
taxes,
okay.
all of that is around 93 for a step one new person. If we hire a lateral, it may be more, but
And so then in the budget, do you additionally allot for an overtime budget on top of that then?
On
Yes.
top of that
Yes.
position, yeah.
Okay. And it would be, again, the 85,000?
Mhm.
Okay, and so do you anticipate then not spending the 85,000 or?
Well, potentially, but I don't want to lead this or any other body to believe that or make a promise that, you know, hey, you get this and then suddenly that goes down. Overtime covers things that are uncontrollable. I can tell you Thanksgiving Day 2014, in about a 48-hour period, we amassed a lot of overtime. Can't predict that. You get a big case that comes out, suddenly we have 3 or 4 officers that are in court for three days at a time, and we spend thousands of dollars on overtime. You just can't predict that. My hope is that with the strength and patrol schedule, we reduce the amount of overtime that's spent on covering shifts. So one would think that assuming everything else stays the same, there would be some reduction in overtime. My answer off the top of my head without Julie running the numbers is we always try to come in underneath that 85,000. So I don't know where those numbers are going to come in, but that's certainly our goal is to come in under that. Just like we would any other budgeted amount. You know, in an ideal world, we finish the fiscal year with money in the budget that for whatever reason we didn't need or we didn't get to or whatever.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Stand by a second, Susan. Brian?
Realizing that turnover is costly, and you mentioned earlier on about swearing in new police officers because others have left to do other things. Are we a pass-through or a destination police force right now? And if the answer is pass-through, what do we need to do to become a destination where a guy can have a rewarding career and be in Sherwood?
So it's my belief that we are a destination agency. Our retention numbers have been tremendous. That would be something that Tom and Cheryl would be able to, kind of dig through and look at. But we've put significant effort I've been here 7+ years, I don't know how many months. We've put significant effort into being an agency that people want to come to work for and stay. And I think we've been very successful at that. We have these last two folks that left. One was a lateral that we hired from another agency, and after about 5 years, he decided he wanted to go back to that other agency. It's a neighboring agency. So don't know why. The other officer that left was a brand new officer we hired as a recruit, and he just decided that the commute that he was taking on a daily basis was too much for he and his family, and so he resigned and went to work at an agency closer to where he lives. So aside from that, we really haven't had any turnover that wasn't good turnover, so to speak. I mean, in terms of people just leaving because they didn't want to work for us anymore. So I think our record's been very good. But again, human resources would have to dig that up. So, I mean, obviously you can't control that 100%, but I think we've done a good job at becoming a destination agency. Well, we have laterals that want to come to work here. I mean, Julie mentioned that. That has been probably a very telling sign for us, is aside from the one officer that I mentioned, the majority of the hires that we've had have been laterals, and we've hired several officers from larger police departments that have come to work for us. So I think that speaks volumes.
Susan, you had a question?
I did, and this is about our canine and the school district. I know that in the past we've talked about the canine spending a lot of time in the schools and having the capability for the sniffing. Is that where we are with the dog?
So those conversations have been frequent, and we continue to work with the school district. Obviously, there's two different perspectives relative to that, and we tend to look at it from one perspective, and the school board and the school district looks at it from a different perspective. I think that's the most honest and safest way to put it. I think where society has gone and Oregon has gone with recreational marijuana changes that, because it becomes even more important, as I mentioned before. But I think the conversations have been good, and I hope very much that school is obviously winding down now, but I hope very much that as fall of 2015 approaches, we will have worked out a plan to have Irma go to school, as it were.
So currently we don't, the dog doesn't really go through the schools yet?
No, she does not.
Okay.
Any additional
Oh, pardon me.
You got follow-up, Susan?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say the amount, the $67,000 that the school district pays toward the police budget, that's for the resource officer, right? And does that cover the entire amount for that, or is that a halftime?
Yes, that is for the school resource officer, and that is exactly 50%. Wow, scratch the word exactly. That's based on 50% shared cost. And we bump that up based on a 2% or so COLA every year.
Okay.
Well, you had a question down there?
Yes, I have a question. So we talked a little bit about turnover, and coming from HR, hiring costs a lot more than keeping. So do we, when we send these officers to their police school and things like that, do they have to sign anything that they'll stay with us for a certain amount of years? You know, anything like that where we've paid to then train them and they come here for 2 months and then head over to Hillsborough or somewhere else, kind of on our training dime?
We do not, and there's a couple parts of that. One, historically, those have found to be unenforceable, and we've confirmed with our city legal representative that oftentimes those are unenforceable. However, it's really becomes a moot point because there's a state statute that was passed a couple sessions ago that was affectionately called the poaching law. And so by state statute, if an officer comes to work at an agency, and I believe they have to be a recruit officer, right? I'd have to confirm that. But within a 3-year period, 36-month period, if they leave, their costs are reimbursable by the agency they go to work for. So in our most recent example, we had an officer that left just shy of 18 months. And so we did, in fact, send an invoice to the agency he went to work for to recover some of our training costs. So that is in place currently, and it is something that we would use if that scenario were to happen. That was the first time that it happened.
And did
for
they
us,
pay you?
but- I'm sorry?
Did they pay you?
I don't,
Pay the
I don't know
invoice.
what the status of that is,
Oh.
so,
Not sure yet. Got it.
yeah, I mean,
Invoice, we explained the law and said, we are gonna recover some of our costs here because we're eligible to do that, and you're gonna get an invoice, and so they recently did get the invoice. I don't know if it's been paid yet, but
Okay.
they will pay.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Chief.
I had one more.
Yes,
just
Susan.
Whenever.
Well, then now would be the time.
Okay, great. On the red light program that we have, Chief, do we keep, are you guys keeping statistics on the number and types of accidents that are going through there? I know we're keeping statistics and keeping track of the tickets and all of that. Are we keeping track of the accidents, and is there a trend? I mean, are we having reductions? Is there, what kind of trending are we finding over there?
yes, so we are able to track our accident data through our record system. And I can tell you that earlier last year, we had actually an intern college student, and I had him pull all that data from our record system, and none of the intersections that are, well, we have 2 intersections that are monitored by photo red light, and neither of those intersections were in the top 10. They had very, very low crash data from our records. So from that perspective, yes, it is making a difference, and crashes have gone down significantly. The other data set comes from ODOT, and they collect their data a little bit differently. They have different definitions on what would constitute an intersection crash based on their spatial definition. So the easiest way to explain it is they extend the intersection a little bit further. And so if a crash happens, a certain distance away, we may not look at it as an intersection crash, and ODOT will. And the other problem with ODOT data is that it's not very fresh at all. So if I were wanting to look at ODOT data, for anything in 2015, I'm not gonna be able to get to it without having somebody dig into the system. I would be able to get data from 2013 and probably part of 14, but they're such a large agency and so much data that they don't issue their reporting in that manner. So, but from the perspective of the latest report that I saw from Washington County and our own data, it has reduced significantly. At one point, Tualatin Sherwood was, I think, in the top 10 of the potentially most dangerous intersections in Washington County. They do a report every 2 years, 3 years? Yeah, 2 years. And it ended up dropping off out of that top 10 list. So I think From my perspective, it has made a difference both at Twalton Sherwood 99 and at Sunset 99.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're finished with you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, everybody's interested in policing, so we spent a lot of time on it. We need to be moving faster. Crack. All right, I believe streets are next? Nope. IT, excuse me. Yes, yes,
With all due respect, may I make a statement, Chair?
certainly.
It would be really helpful, I think, for the sake of the committee as well as senior staff, if all of the questions posed during the meeting were specifically related to the budget.
I would agree with you. I think we lost a little bit of focus on that last one, so let's try and sharpen our focus.
So Chair,
you.
just
Yes.
for the sake of clarity, the next section of the budget is the administration section, which has multiple departments within it. I'm going to cover most of them, but I wanted to allow Brad Crawford to talk about IT next and respond to any questions about the IT department. And then Julie's going to touch upon finance and municipal court, and then I will cover the rest of administration. And Tom will talk about HR and risk management. So with that, go ahead, Brad.
Good evening, committee members. I won't read verbatim the details of who we are and what we do. Hopefully, you all understand what IT does. I will make note of a couple key projects we're working on this next year. As you might remember, last year we replaced a lot of the audiovisual equipment in this room with an effort to try to go live. So that's planned, and probably do some testing in July for that. We'll be live broadcasting on our cable access channels and on the internet as well. That's one project we'll start. We have a little bit of a few other pieces of audio-video equipment we got to replace this year that we didn't have budget for. We'll do that. Big project for us, and what I'm excited about is completing of a formal security audit. We started part of that last year with replacing some aging equipment. We'll do the complete audit this year, and we've set aside some dollars in this coming year's budget to address any findings that may come from that audit. We also have a storage project for some new video archiving that we need to do, so we have some budgeted dollars in there for that, as well as some backup software to increase capacity and some functionality. I guess jumping back on the video side, we're going to also try to record a little bit more, several of the boards and commission meetings. Right now we only do city council and planning commission. So in an effort to try to get more content for the cable access channel, we'll do library board and parks board and some of those others that don't get recorded. Several other projects, a lot of IT infrastructure type projects. I won't bore you with those, but we got a lot going on this year. I don't think any questions that you guys have.
I do have a question about
Yes.
your move to Office 365.
Yes.
That converts from owned license model
Mhm.
to a subscription model
Yep.
per year.
Yep.
What's the financial change in going to a subscription model to the city?
It's a great question. We've looked at Office 365 throughout the years, and it's always been substantially more expensive. We have a Microsoft Enterprise agreement currently, and they've finally made the model cheaper to go to a hosted solution than it is to pay for the Enterprise agreement. In all actuality, we probably won't make that decision until the end of next fiscal year, and things can change during that time. So we'll evaluate it all the way up until the very end. But right now, the pricing they're giving us now is cheaper than our EA, our Enterprise agreement is.
So it's cheaper than the renewal of the support
Correct.
for what you have today.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, I have one question. Under the 2014 and 15 highlights, it says, continued working with the school district to develop their new video program.
Yep.
And that was within the city budget?
There's no budget impact on it.
Okay.
It's we approached the high school probably 2 years ago about starting a video program to start producing some content for the cable access channel. Last year, this year was a huge success. They had 2 full classes. You probably saw a lot of the kids in the room during council meetings. So we have a little bit of work to do on our end where we got to get waivers signed with the kids. And I didn't want to accept some of their video until we kind of got that clear. But in their last meeting with them, I think we've got that kind of ironed out. And next year, they're going to start filming a lot of their own projects that we'll use on our cable access channel, as well as we're going to try to get them to their school board meeting and just some more fresh content. So it didn't have budget impact. It was just purely a coordination effort more than anything.
Thank you.
Anything else? Next. I think that's you, Julie.
All right, thank you. So the finance department is responsible for both finance and our municipal court. And we have 4 people on our finance side and 3 people on our court side. And then I have a half-time Kelsey who does everything. So the big thing that we're going to do on the finance side this year is we're going to complete our implementation of our new finance software. We're working on it right now. We're doing setup pieces and workflows, and we're hoping to be up and running September-ish, September, October. And I'm really excited what we've seen so far. I can't wait. I will actually be able to give you guys reports. So we're really excited about that. It's going to create a lot of efficiencies, not just for finance, but in other areas too. So that's our big project for the year. And then in court, every, 4, 5, 6 years, we try to offer an amnesty opportunity. We did it, I think it was 5 years ago, the last time we offered it. And what it is we will determine a date range of up to this date. If you've been suspended, you're in collections, we will offer you an opportunity to, if you pay half, we will get your record cleaned up and you can get your license back. It's just, one, it's good for people who are really struggling, and people need their cars to get to work, and it's just that vicious cycle. So it's not something we do every year. We don't want people counting on it. So we randomly will decide, it's about time we do this again. So that's something we're going to look at doing again this year. We'll bring it before council and see if they're on board with us approaching that again. But otherwise, our departments are pretty much status quo this year. Getting budgets done, getting CAFRs done. Any questions?
How much would that amnesty opportunity, how does it affect the budget? Does it bring it down, bring it up?
Actually, the last time we did it, it brought it up because we brought in revenue that we probably never would have seen.
That's what I was asking. Thanks.
Yeah, it was a tremendous opportunity. The last time we did it was right after the economy crashed. And our very first customer came in with $4,000 in cash. He had, I can't remember how many tickets he had. But he walked in the door with $4,000 cash, and all he could do was thank us over and over and over again for giving him this opportunity to get his license back. He was so appreciative. And I don't know about you, but if I had to pay $4,000, I wouldn't be all that happy. You'd have thought we just handed him the lottery. It was very successful, and people were very appreciative. And like I said, we collected revenue we probably would never see otherwise.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Court-wise and fines-wise, have you pretty much been staying on budget?
We have.
There haven't been any big surprises?
Nope.
Any other? Yeah.
What about, it says that we added pro tem judges. I thought we only had one.
We now have, I believe, 3 that we can choose from.
Okay.
Because they're not always available, so we needed a pool of pro tems that were available.
Okay, that's not increasing the budget, though.
No, they just replace our regular judge when he's on vacation, so
Okay.
that's already budgeted.
And then, is there any goal for this year in the finance department to consider moving to a 2-year budget?
Yes. That's one of my goals, is this next year to work with council about possibly looking at going to a biennial budget. There are several cities locally who have done that and found great success and great efficiencies in both staff time and citizen committee time. This next year would be a good year to do a test run, because I want to put us on the same cycle with the state. So when our PERS rates change, we have a new budget, because they're every 2 years. So I want the same biennial cycle. And this fiscal year, 15-16, is a new biennium. So next fiscal year would be a good trial run for us to try to put together a 2-year budget, put it before this committee, see how it works, give us a test run before we have to do it for real the following year. So that is something we'll be talking about more this year, if this is something that council would like to pursue, because it is a council action to change to a different budget cycle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, none there, so Joe, I guess you're up.
Okay, we're going to start on page 46. So one of the changes in this year's budget for the veteran members of the Budget Committee, the City Council budget and the City Recorder budget in past budgets were together. So the expenses and everything were mixed together. We've separated those out so we can clearly track the expenses for council versus the expenses for the City Recorder's section. So the City Council budget is largely composed of expenses for training opportunities. There is a bump compared to previous years. I think in the details there was $16,000 in travel and training, which sounds significant. That's based on a whole series of, I met with the mayor about what different types of training opportunities that she wanted to do this year, conferences. So that money we put aside, the 3 or 4 opportunities that she wanted to participate in during the year. We have a new council primarily. So I think this council, we wanted to budget for LOC trainings and going to the LOC conference. Unlike previous councils, I think the newer councils will say every time they go to a training, they learn something. And it's a great opportunity. So we've bumped those dollars up a little bit more than in previous budgets. The big conference in September in Bend this year is the League of Oregon Cities Conference. We anticipated at least 4, if not more, of the counselors to go to that training. All of that training is in state. Some of the travel for the mayor is out of state, so some of the conferences that we budgeted for. I think the mayor in the 5 months that she's been in office has learned a tremendous amount in terms of some of the opportunities she's gone to and the networks and the information sources. So it's a little different than previous councils, but it's not abnormal compared to councils I've seen in other jurisdictions. Councilors do not get compensated much for the hard work that you do and spending at all. So. So that's an increase. So I didn't know if you had any other questions about the council budget per se.
I just have one question, actually. With the travel and training for council, might that increase revenue opportunities for the city as a result of that training?
Yes, I'll give an example. The mayor went on a trip to DC recently as part of JPAC, but she also met with our congressional delegation and our lobbyists there and made some inroads on some potential grant applications and things to bring some of those federal dollars back. That makes a difference.
I was hoping you would say that.
So
Thank you.
I'm a firm believer in that. And it's hard work to go to DC. I think Councilor Henderson had the opportunity a couple years to go. Councilor Folsom went last year, I believe, and I think the mayor came back and said, wow, that was exhausting. It's a great opportunity to be on the Hill, but it's a lot of work. And we're hoping.
It's not new. We've been doing that for years.
Yep.
We've just been more successful in.
Yes. So yes, that's part of the reason why we do those things, to bring some of those resources back.
Joe?
If I remember some discussions at the Charter Review Committee, there was some concerns and suggestions for control on counselors submitting expense costs for trips and so on and so forth. Has that been implemented now?
No, we haven't actually had the conversation with the council about reporting that back. I mean, we will be able to track that better now that we're budgeting separately. We've talked about, just providing data each month. Here's where counselors spent money and expensed items, just as information. That's pretty common in other jurisdictions, but we haven't done that yet,
Okay.
so.
Well, and I think maybe for Neil, to put it in perspective, during my trip to DC, I was thanking our congressional delegates for an EPA grant that we received for $200,000. I can guarantee that I did not spend $200,000 on my trip to DC. And while I was there, I was able to gather information up for a grant that we had an opportunity to write right when I got back, and our great staff finished it last week for another probably $90,000 if we receive it. So there are opportunities that far exceed any small pittance that we might pay to have the opportunity to stand in front of the delegation and ask, please support Sherwood and please be involved with Sherwood and investing in Sherwood.
No, and I understand and have absolutely no objections to that. It was more along the lines of how do we keep track of it? So,
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm looking at the detail. On attachment A, page 2 of 21, the detailed dollar amounts for the administration division, and under city manager, there is $10,500 for community support and promotion, and there's $1,000 for special projects, and I just wanted to know what those were.
Okay. We're not there yet, but for the sake of, because we're
Oh.
still on the city council budget.
Okay.
But let me answer those quickly. The 10,500, 10,000 of that is the annual contribution to the Robin Hood Festival.
Oh, okay.
So we have historically, in past years, before I got here, I think we gave money to a wide variety of organizations. The remnant from that program has been a annual contribution to the Robin Hood Festival to do both of their festivals, the summer and the winter, and that's a $10,000 contribution. The other 500 is for sponsorships. For example, for Cruisin', if we sponsor Cruisin' at $150, it would come out of that. So that's what that line item is. And then special projects, the $1,000, that's essentially for those unforeseen things that come up that I have a little bit of money in my budget to plan for. For example, a float in the Grand Floral Parade that when we put the budget together last year, I never envisioned we would be putting together a float for the Grand Floral Parade. So there's some expenses to that, and that's what a special project is. So we always try to plan a little bit for those unforeseen things.
if there are no more questions on city council, go on to the next.
Thank you. You might as well keep that page handy. So the next budget is the city recorder's budget, which is essentially Sylvia and all the many, many things that she operates. I think the one highlight, or the one note, I think 2014-15, when you look at all the work that normally would not happen, it's been a really, really busy year for Sylvia in the city recorder's office. When you think of charter review, all the multiple elections and everything else, hopefully this year will be a much more normal routine business in a sense. But this budget, I don't think, give me this real quick. And again, I think you'll see in most of these budgets we're talking about, a lot of the materials and services are travel and training type opportunities. So she's a member of her professional association, and there's some 1 or 2 conferences that she attends each year and things like that. So any questions on the details for city recorder?
I just had one.
Sure, go ahead,
The
Susan.
The FTE for the city recorder, is that 1 or is that 1.5 or,
It's 1.5.
okay,
So Colleen Resch is our part-time assistant. So she's the 0.5.
thank you.
Any other questions for the city recorder? We'll go to city manager then. This budget covers myself and a portion of Tom Pessimir as the assistant city manager, and then Tina Olet, who is our shared executive assistant for the city manager's office. I think the two things that I want to highlight that we are excited about getting done next year is there is money in the budget to complete the strategic plan. I think that's something that is long overdue. It will help this committee and the council in the future to plan budgets because we'll have a 5-year strategic plan for the organization, something that we lack, and I really want to get that done in the coming year. The other will be near and dear to Councilor Kuiper. We are putting money in the budget to develop our first ever Citizens Academy program. Many cities do this, and I think we're excited about developing an academy where citizens who want to know more about how the city operates can go through that academy and learn the various ins and outs of the different departments and how the city operates. There are a lot of successful models in other cities. We've seen in other cities where they have successful programs, a lot of those people learn more, they kind of get the bug, and then they want to get on a board and committee. And then they serve on a board and commission and they come in not totally green, they have a better understanding going through the Citizens Academy. And then many jump to council. So instead of like some of you who have been recently elected to council and never served on a board or commission, going through a course like that, and I anticipate maybe some of you might even want to participate in the Citizens Academy that we put together. So there is money, a small amount of money to pay for the cost. You got to feed folks that participate. That's what we've learned in terms of if you're going to keep them here once a month for 3 hours, you should be able to feed them so they can learn about the city's functions. So, Councilor Comp. Yes. No, it is not a public meeting.
Right.
So we anticipate you will apply and have to agree. Most programs want a commitment because there's a time commitment in terms of staff putting together their curriculum and everything else. It is not open to the public. So there'll be a class of probably 25 to 30 people that would apply, that would be selected to go through it.
And just to add to that, if this goes well for this year, we hope to do something, roll out something maybe in January.
Yes.
And this could be an annual program. And my question, so I won't go into the details, but the question is for budgeting for this year, the individual that will be working on this, is this from a grant, this person that we're sharing with another city?
The person that we've identified to help put the details of this together is the shared intern that will be starting on July 1st.
And is
that's
that a
with
budgeted
Westland.
item,
That's
or is
in
it
the
grant?
budget, but
Okay.
not it's in the personnel costs.
Okay. Great.
But we have had for the last 2 years a successful relationship with Westland,
Mhm.
where we share mostly a recent graduate student.
Right.
And part of that person's task will be developing the curriculum and the program so we can launch the Citizens Academy in January of 2016.
And I thank you, and I think it's going to be a great
No, we're
boon,
pretty excited about it,
developing
so.
citizens, knowledgeable citizens. Great.
Any other questions about the city manager section itself?
The FTEs on that, what does that break down to?
Well, I believe I'm fully funded in that. Tom is partially funded. We're digging through to get the details, Susan.
I broke my packet.
While she's looking for that number, I will
1.2?
highlight, one of the goals that we listed there in fiscal year 16 is to have 500 Facebook friends. We're at 494.
And I notice you have
so-
none now, is that correct?
Well, we just
You
launched
have
our Facebook
nothing.
site, but it has been much more successful than we expected, and we're almost to 500 already, so we can probably change that, so. I know.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
The FTE in the city manager's budget is 2.65.
So how's that do we know how that's broken down?
Yes. It's you, and it's part of Tom, all of Tina, and then
The
the
intern.
intern.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Good.
Onward.
Okay, I'm going to let Tom Pesmer, the Assistant City Manager, part of his portfolio is HR and risk management, so I'll let him focus on those pages of the budget.
Thank you. So just real quickly, human resources, as far as staffing goes, is really pretty much one full-time equivalent. We have Cheryl Childers, who is our HR analyst, who does most of the work, and then I provide assistance managing the department and making sure things are going. But don't spend a ton of time in human resources unless I need to. So it's on a ongoing basis. But it's really a full-service human resources. We provide personal services support, recruitment, training, and development, benefits and compensation, manage two union contracts, and employer relations, risk management for all of our workers' compensation, property, auto, equipment, liability insurance. So very busy. We spent a lot of time this last year doing recruitments because we just had a lot of positions, and so very busy. And one of the things in our goals that I'll highlight is implementing an onboarding process. We certainly have all of the proper forms and everything that we do to bring new employees on, but we've found that we think we can improve that process to have people on their first and second days in particular really have a good experience coming into the organization, working more with managers to make sure that they have their day planned out, as well as just a good training and understanding of all the different handoffs that happen. So we actually do it fairly well right now, but we really want to create a system that is better. We traditionally over the last 5 to 6 years, haven't brought a lot of people on, but we certainly had a lot more this year, and we want to make that process go smoother for everyone.
Tom, quick question. You said you manage the union contracts. When are they due for renewal, and when are those costs for doing that renewal going to hit us?
Well, so we just this year renegotiated a contract with the Sherwood Police Officers Association, and that's a 2-year contract. So we won't be doing that again for a period of time. The ASHME contract has been kind of rolling over every year. It's rolled over for the last 3 years, I believe. So potentially, if they want to enter into negotiations or we want to enter into negotiations, we would. That usually would happen right around May, I believe, is the time frame that those changes would typically happen. So
no foreseen impacts this year, but
if it was, it would be late in the year. So
thank you.
Similar question on insurance. How often are we reviewing insurance rates?
Not super often. We have pretty competitive rates from CIS, which is city county insurance services. We currently have our health insurance with them, and as every other jurisdiction in the state, because every time we go out and take a look at comparables, nobody can meet their pool rates just because the pools as well. For workers' compensation, we have SAFE, and we found the rates to be much less expensive there. We probably this next year we will go back out and do both of those again, just just to make sure. But historically, those have been pretty easy to do. The property and liability we also have with CIS, and we're actually working with our agent right now to see if there is a better option for us. I don't think from a budget perspective or price perspective we'll find something better, but we're also wanting to look at private providers other than CIS that might be able to provide those services and give us a little bit better service. So probably won't make a change there this year, but we're certainly looking into it and may go down that path next year.
Thanks.
Any other additional questions?
Chair, I want to highlight one page you do not have a description of, but it definitely has a budget impact if you're comparing administration from last year to this year, the city attorney's office. So in previous years, including this year, our attorney costs have been spread across all the different departments. We have a contract attorney with Beery, Elsner, and Hammond. We're in the process of transitioning to an in-house attorney. So we will track those costs in a new department because it'll be in an internal department. We are projecting those costs to be slightly higher than what we normally in a normal year have used with Beery, Elsner, and Hammond. We think that will come down. There's some initial investment in terms of the office space and other things to set up the new city attorney's office. That will be a city attorney and then ultimately probably like a legal assistant or a support person for that city attorney. So that's a big shift that we are implementing on an ongoing basis. We have a good pool of candidates. I think the council will hopefully be conducting interviews of candidates, we're hoping in June. And we've budgeted for the full year, starting July 1st, to have that attorney. We may or may not hit that mark depending on how the interviews, but it'll be early in next fiscal year. And then we budgeted 9 months for the assistant position because it'll take a little bit of time for whoever the city attorney is to figure out he or she to hire their assistant. So that's one of the reasons you see a bump in the administration department is the city attorney's been added, but there's no page yet talking about what the goals of the city attorney department is because we don't have a city attorney yet to really develop that. So it's a big transition for us.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
In the budget detail for administration in general, which does include, I believe, the city attorney, and that's on page 45 of our package materials, there is no cost associated with licenses and permits. And for our city attorney, there will be Oregon State bar dues and PLF fees. It's a mandatory malpractice insurer. So I didn't know if you had incorporated, and also continuing legal education costs. So I didn't know if you had incorporated that into the budget because there was a 0 in that column.
Well, that's the revenue column, Counselor. But the expenditure side, we did put an estimate together in some of those costs. Again, whether this is new territory for us, so whether or not we've budgeted enough, we will learn. But we did put some training costs and professional association, the bar association, and things like that in there. So that's a good catch.
So I have a question.
Yes.
I might be going into too much detail, but I noticed under city attorney for cell phones, $1,444. Just thinking that's a fancy phone. 2 phones?
That's a cell phone
Buying
stipend.
the phone and then,
No,
oh no.
we
just the
don't
brand.
own the phones.
Okay.
We pay a stipend, and that's for both the attorney and whether it's paralegal or legal secretary, whatever that other position is. That's an entire year's worth for both of them.
And can you explain, that's a standard stipend that
Yes, it is.
provided?
Depending on your level in the city, like our most of our supervisors have one rate. Those of us that have to be tied to this thing 24/7 and have our email and our phone and everything else on here, we have a different rate. So it just depends on what your commitment level is to your phone or what the requirement is from the city for you to be tied to your phone as to what that rate is.
Okay. That would be very surprising to me that a paralegal or a legal assistant would be entitled to a phone.
We don't know. We put money in. We didn't know.
City attorney on,
City attorney, definitely, I can understand, but a legal assistant, no.
So that might be an area that we just don't.
Yeah.
We just don't do. We tried to think of anything and everything that might happen. It's better to come in under budget than over.
Are there any additional questions? If not, I see it at 7:30 right now. I would suggest that we take a 5-minute break. So I will be reconvening at 7:35, and if you're not in the room, you'll miss something. Well, that's,
Did you take this from me?
Personal phone?
Isn't that fantastic? It was on the table.
No, it's mine.
That's hysterical.
I'm not paying a legal assistant for a phone.
I don't think anyone should, I'm sorry, I don't think any staff cell phone.
I don't either.
Maybe Joe's because I text him all
Yeah.
hours of the night, but I
Yeah.
didn't text him all hours of the night until he said I have my phone on me if you need me. I mean,
I mean, if you look at cell phones, how much we
Yeah.
spend on cell phones, it's
right,
it's a ton of money.
$2,300.
That's just for him. And then
Well, his
look,
2
you've
staff
got
members.
city council. We don't get paid for cell phones. I didn't catch that.
Why do we have that?
And then HR, that I can understand. IT, I guess I can understand that. City
ITs make
recorder.
sense. Do we pay for Sylvia's phone?
She really need to be on
I mean, these are
call.
small amounts, and so part of me is like, let it go.
I will say thank you.
And you do not need to remember.
Thank you. Before we get on to streets, I was asked to make one minor announcement or presentation, and I'm told that it's the mayor's birthday today. So we have had the request for a serenade, basically a happy birthday. So
Nobody's
I'll,
gonna jump out of a
I'll
cage?
get it
What?
started, but don't leave me hanging. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear mayor. Happy birthday to you. Yay. And I understand there'll be a little treats being passed around to the group. So, but we're going to make it a working session. So
29 again.
we're
That's
back in
right.
session. Oh,
Hey, don't get
and-
so loud over there.
Right.
What?
Right. I was also asked to remind everybody a little bit later, we will have some opportunity for public comments. And there are some forms on the back table. If you'd like to make a comment to the committee, please complete that form and bring it forward. Greg.
Good evening. We're going to go over the Street Operation Fund. I don't think I really need to read what the street section does, but we do maintain over 50 miles of streets within the city. We break it really down into a couple different categories. Pavement management, which consists of our crack sealing, our slurry seal, our patching, our overlays, and our reconstruction of streets. Our right-of-way maintenance, which consists of sidewalk repairs, vegetation, barricades, signs, as well as our sidewalk program, tree trimming, that kind of stuff. And then our traffic markings, our street signs, crosswalk striping, really. And then actually the fourth one is our street lights, which is a big part of this budget. It's about $211,000 a year, $195 of it to keep the lights on. Then we have end-of-life costs with street lights of about anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000, depending. I think this year there's 10. And then we have our own city street lights within the city that we maintain. That's not PGE responsibility. Some of the things this next year that the money that's in the budget is to start replacing. We have about 82 wooden light poles that's been in the system for quite a few years that have defects. We're going to spend about $50,000 this year on that. We have hopefully be able to replace about 33 poles for that. Hopefully we'll be able to do it over just over 2 years is what we're planning to do. Also continue with our sidewalk replacement program. That area this next year is kind of Galbraith area, 3rd roughly to Highway 99. That's the section we're in. Langer Farms Parkway over like Baylor and Sherwood Village. Our slurry seal program, we've got about $125,000 in there for that. That's kind of Middleton area, Middleton Elementary School area, Pinehurst, other side of Sunset, Old Highway 99. Our pavement management program this year, we have about close to $800,000 in there. The street that'll be getting attention is Tualatin Street, which is the only gravel street still in Sherwood, besides our alleys, as well as Highland. We're actually doing a sewer project right there right now. It should finish up here in another month, so hopefully we'll be able to pay that next year. We also have about $10,000 in there. Last year we had 50. This year we got 10 for ADA ramp to be in compliance there. And then some of those streets, there's just a couple of them for that 10 that you're going to get done, and it's Lee over by the high school, Lee and Travis Court. If the budget allows, there's one on 12th and Glen Eagle that we need to do also, depending on the budget. Murdoch Road pedestrian improvements at Fair Oaks. There needs to be some ADA compliance there, as well as a crosswalk, as well as flashing crosswalk lights there, solar paneled. There's about $20,000 in there for that. And then also a pedestrian improvement at Sunset and Alder Grove on the stop signs for about $25,000.
Craig?
Yeah.
Where's the flashing light?
It'll be right at Fair Oaks. It'll be, are you talking about the Fair Oaks one, Murdoch one?
Yeah,
It's
I
at
wasn't sure if.
It's at Fair Oaks. It'll be a crosswalk that goes across from Willamette to Fair Oaks there. And then there'll be, there's solar panels that go in there, as well as there'll be warnings, flashing lights also down the street from that. So when the people from Fair Oaks come out, or from people that want to walk across the street there, they'll hit the light and it'll flash, and it'll be flashing at the warning light too, because the speed limit is like 35 or 40 miles an hour. Or more.
40 if you're going downhill for most people.
Yeah.
And what's that costing?
It's about $20,000 for the improvements. Total, yeah. So there's a couple ADA ramps. This year, we actually are putting lights on Murdoch. We're in the middle of that project right now, and there's going to be a light added there this year, and then next year we'll finish it off. We're about 8 weeks out, probably, or longer to get the lights here.
And then I walk my dog often at night, and I still see people blow through the stop sign at Alder Grove and Sunset. It's like it doesn't exist for some people. So are you proposing putting flash?
Yeah, so there's a $25,000 budget for that, and that will be flashing stop sign at Alder Grove, as well as flashing warning signs coming up the street on that. It's going to be tricky in the warning signs because of trees and stuff, but that's the plan.
Alder Grove and Sunset?
Yeah, right there at the entrance of Snyder Park.
How long ago do you remember we put that stop sign in?
Oh, that's probably been, it's been right after the lower part of the park was put in, so it must have
So
been
2006?
2005 or 6, something like that.
Okay, 5 or 6, yeah.
Craig, really quick question. The first capital budget item is for installing CalSense. What is CalSense?
CalSense is our water irrigation management system. For our irrigation, we run it all by computer back at the shop.
Good deal. Thank you.
You bet.
I have a question. So with your budget being, I would say significantly less than last year's budget, and with the uptick in the economy, do you feel you have enough to maintain the infrastructure without it decaying?
Right now, council in the past have had, if we're talking about the roads or other assets, with the roads, we were behind in our pavement management program from the start, so we're still behind in our pavement management program. But we are keeping it at 80 PCI, 79 to 80. Every once in a while, we'll dip to a 78. So that's telling us that we're still behind a little bit, where council in the past has asked us to be about an 80. So sometimes you might even be an 81. It just depends on the roads that you do. But you got to remember, when we got to an 80, there was a water line project that went in that the road had to be repaved because the water line was going down it. So there were some reasons why we're at 80 right now instead of the upper 70s.
What is PCI?
Pavement Condition Index.
Okay.
The roads are rated on a 0 to 100, with 0 being the worst roads and 100 being the best roads.
And is that an average?
Yeah.
Okay.
Throughout, each road
Yes.
has a rating. Each section of road actually has a rating.
Is that an average per road or an average citywide?
It's citywide.
Okay.
Have we ever considered blinking stop signs near parks and schools?
We've looked into it. We've never had the budget part to go and do that because we've put the money towards our pavement management program.
Right.
But we have put up some radar signs in those school zones, I believe at Archer Glen as well as Middleton on one section of road coming up. But that's
yeah.
that's some pedestrian in the future. It's something we need to be looking at. Yes.
Okay.
Craig, I have another question.
Yes.
Is that a what's the range for PCI?
0 to 100.
But I mean, in the city,
In the
what's
zero.
the lowest?
The
that
lowest
you've
we've
seen?
had roads that are down in the like we'll use Lincoln Street. We just paved.
Yeah.
It was down in 14s, I think.
Wow.
So
Okay. And what are we?
you
want to
try to do your slurry seals when you're at 70, 80, so you can actually save the road before it starts really going bad.
Yes.
The roads that we're doing, like the section of Sunset, it's in the one of them's in the low 40s, either that or April Court. One of them was in the low 40s that we were actually doing overlay on. So we went into Glen Eagles. They were all 16 and 17s when we reconstructed those. So like the road we're getting ready to do on Sunset, we try to get the overlay so you only have to grind down and put 1.5 inches in instead of rebuilding the whole thing.
Greg, I think we're in, about year 3 of the sidewalk program now?
Yeah, we're getting close. It was a 5-year program.
Right, and that's primarily funded by fees on the water bill?
Yes.
Do we anticipate that sunsetting, or?
Well, I think we'll be doing we'll be rating them again and bringing that back to council here probably within the next year or so to see if what we have out there still. I do know that I'm being told, and I've seen myself, that we have other spots throughout the city that have popped up since we started the program. So that'll be a decision the council will need to make when the program runs out or gets close to running out.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions, Craig. One, does it fall within the street category fund for removal of those gaudy, big, huge structures that hold the lights and stop signs?
That would be, it
Monuments.
would fall within the street fund if they were to
And
do that, yes.
Do we have money in the budget to do that?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I mean, your 800,000 this year is to pave Highland. Your 800,000 is to do toilets in the street. We've got some repairs on Galbraith that we need to do. We also need to take a look at down here on Railroad Street where the tree fell over here not too long ago. If the two property owners there, to work with them to see if we want to actually get a couple parking spaces in there, in front down there, instead of leaving an island out with no tree in it now. I'm sure that was, I wasn't here, but I'm sure that island was put in for some reason when that, to not disturb the tree back then. So that's really where that money's gone.
And do we have an estimate of how much it would cost to remove all those monuments, or at least the ones that we can replace without having to go?
No, right. I don't have a cost for that, but that's something we can look into if that's an interest of.
Okay, well, I think it's a safety issue
It
for
is
the
a
buses
safety issue.
especially.
Yeah, it is.
I would like to see that. Secondly, as one of your goals, you have replaced a quarter of the city street name signs, and and correct me if I'm wrong, that has to do with compliance with the fire code or something about the signs being reflective?
It's a federal through the MUTCD. It's a federal law that actually it was all supposed to be done. You had your regulatory signs that had to be done, I believe it was like 13 or something like that, and then your street name sign had to be larger than what they were, and they had to be a prismatic, which is a reflective. And it was supposed to be done by 15, and then the federal government moved that out to 19 or 17, something like that. So we're just moving along at a slower pace than what we're doing it anyways.
Once we complete the quarter that you're anticipating for this fiscal year, are we going to be done with that?
We should be getting very close. It'll just be after that. It'll just be like replacement signs or vandalized signs, or when we need to do it.
And then my final question is, under the revenue for street capital fund, there's fines, interest and other of $10,000. And I'm curious what that, it jumped up from 2,000 to 10,000. So can you explain what that is?
We're not
We're
on
not there yet.
capital yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I will address the question about the monuments.
Okay.
Engineering is working on that. That's why Craig is not. They're looking into that now. We've heard the concerns, and so they're working on that. And Julia can maybe elaborate more or not when we get to the capital side.
I have a couple of questions, Craig, if that's okay. On the replacement of the city street signs, because we have until 2019, could we defer a portion of those signs and consider, as a committee, looking at adding some of the blinking stop signs in some of our busier areas? Perhaps we could get the chief staff to let us know where there have been greater incidents or collisions, for example. Sorry, Chief.
We're not talking that much money for those
We're not.
signs. No.
Darn it.
Actually, I mean, you're in the big picture. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not. Well, you're talking blinking stop signs for the, Well, it's not just the blinking signs. There's
The
the other stuff
electrical,
that's got to go in. If you don't, you can use solar, but there's other things depending on the area. You got to bring stuff up to ADA compliance, and there's some other things to consider when you're looking at that. So kind of like what we're doing at Murdoch. So, but you're probably looking at
31,000 for the signs.
and that's not all just the replacement.
No, it's
because what happens is we go into developments that the developer pays for the signs at $200 a sign, and we install all the street signs. So the street signs that you're running 31,000 out of is for. Usually we spend about close to $20,000 on signs a year, depending on the development and other things, and then the rest goes towards. You're probably looking at like the crosswalk at Murdoch, just for the flashing lights. You're probably close to 14 just there. Yeah. Right. Just the signs itself to have them installed and put up, and yeah.
Okay.
Anything else for Craig? Thank you, sir. On to the next one. Water operations.
So before Craig starts, I just want to clarify, first, we're going to go through all the operational sides of the enterprise funds, and then we will talk about the capital side after, okay?
So I don't need to really read what the water operations does, but some of the functions that we do is water meter management, which is reading meters and stuff that relates to water meters. Utility billing is out of this portion. We do a conservation program here. We also have a low-income assistance program, backflow assembly program, our sampling program. We have a leak detection program that's required part of our permit through the Willamette River. We have a hydrant maintenance program, which we flush about half our fire hydrants a year. We have a flushing program. We also do inspections for new development out of this group, as well as plan review for water. And then we have valve maintenance program. So some of the stuff that's in this budget is to maintain our groundwater wells at emergency status. So now that we're with the Willamette, we actually will be using our wells as complete backup or emergency. That was what was in our water master plan as well. And I can tell you, since we went to the Willamette, we do not receive the calls that we used to receive when we took all well water. So the water, the white spots and everything else, we don't receive that call anymore. So, and if it is, it's very minimal. And it might be during the summer months when we use our, during peaking season, we do use the wells a little bit. We need to complete the AMI metering system installation. We have installation of fire hydrants at well 3 and well 5, which goes into play with the emergency status. So there's some money in there for that. Initiate budget billing once the software upgrade happens this next year. We're hoping that happens in August or September. Perform preventive maintenance on half of our fire hydrants, like I talked about. Our uniflushing directional flushing program, which a lot of that we're not being able to do right now because of some of the river levels on the Willamette and part of our permits. So once that gets lifted, because the conservation measures, we have to go in and check the river every day, record all the levels. So there's certain things we have to do to draw water out of the Willamette. Implement our recommended CIP program. In this budget is an addition of seasonal maintenance workers. One of them that we're planning on using to dig meter boxes, insides of the meter boxes out, so when we're installing the AMI, we don't have our full-time staff doing that to come through to set the water meters. And the other position that we're asking for seasonal is to start painting fire hydrants throughout town. That's a complaint we've heard from the residents. We understand they're not in the best condition out there, and we put it in the budget for a seasonal to be able to do that work for us. Another project in this budget is well number 4, water right transfer and decommission of that well, and that would be something the city council can decide if they're interested in doing that. You might be able to sell the property there, lots of some sorts, as we've talked about. And then one of the biggest increases in here is water costs at the plant, and you'll see that in the 1.4 under, I don't have it right in front of me, but let me get back here. It's up about $300 and some thousand. So that's what one of the biggest costs in here is. So do you have any questions? I'm getting there. It's actually under water purchases on the budget stuff that Julie sent out to you.
For the decommissioning of well number 4, where's that line item, or
It would
where's that
be
included?
in well number 4, professional and other services. That's in the 132,525 number you
Okay.
see.
Yep.
Is there any revenue budgeted for fines associated with illegal dumping in water sources like storms, catch basins?
So we have, that's a different fund than the
Yeah,
water
okay.
fund. But there is, through code compliance, through our ordinances and through clean water services, yes.
Okay. But it's your staff that would,
We work, yes, and then we would work with source control, and it would be us if there's any cross connections or anything that deal with the property owner, yeah.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on water?
So I just want to clarify, for the water operations, you're seeking 2 seasonal workers? And how many FTEs would that equate to?
That's in the FTE count.
Oh, okay.
So to be honest with, when you talk seasonal workers, we have a hard time getting seasonal workers for a full 6 months here. And they usually, right now we should be staffed way up in our park side with seasonal workers, and I think we have 3, to be honest with you, and that's when we get behind because we rely on seasonal workers. And actually, I believe the FTE that we're asking for in the park side, we gave up actually 2 seasonals to actually get a full time because it was fine when the economy was down, but you get applications and you get kids that can't start until June or whatever till they're out of school and they're here for 2 months or 3 months and that's it. So, but we are looking at, we spent a lot of time on the AMI project and that would be helpful to get out in front of the guys actually installing the meters. We've done the easier parts of town and now we're coming in some of the parts of the town that's not so easy. So that's what we're looking at. So back to your question on the FTE part of it. I think, did you change something up on the 0.95 because that was actually needed to go over to water? Julia, the maintenance worker too? So that must make it about 8 something. But that's with our billing staff and our analyst and some other folks. It's just not maintenance workers.
You can't hear too well back there.
I guess, Linda, you had oh, okay. I think we're just looking for some numbers, but Craig, you're estimating it's about 8
It's a little
FTE.
over 8 because it's 7.
We have 7.5 allocated into the water fund, and that includes seasonals, it includes utility billing, management, maintenance workers. It's,
Julie, the 9.95 in fleet actually goes over to water too.
okay, 8.5.
That's what I was talking.
Sorry.
8.5 is
8.5.
what I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. I guess just a reminder to make sure you turn on your microphone and let the audience and the camera understand what we're saying. Anything else on water? Okay.
Can I ask a question? Just
Yes, you may,
tell
Susan.
me when I can. How the 4% increase that is being asked for in this budget, is this the place where we talk about that, or?
We can. It's, we did a work session with council a few weeks back on this with our consultants to go over the SDC methodology and proposed changes in the SDCs and the rates. And those will be coming forward in the fee schedule in June. And they'll have a public hearing at that point. But we are proposing to do a 4% water rate increase.
So I have a question. If that 4% is accounted for in here, I'm assuming.
You know, I don't
How
think
much money is that going to raise?
it's not included in
So
here.
it would be an
Addition.
addition, okay.
So actually, just to clarify, Julie's telling us that while there may be a proposed rate increase going before city council, that rate increase is not incorporated in this current budget.
Correct. It's not reflected in the revenue.
Okay. So Susan, I'm thinking that if you had some comments on water rate increases, it probably would be more appropriate to take it to city council with when that's heard by them.
Well, in the front of the document, it says that that we're having a 4% increase. Is that just inaccurate, or?
No. We are
Look on page 6.
We are proposing a 4% increase. We just did not put the revenue in because it hasn't been approved yet.
So that's not part of any of these numbers in this budget.
Correct.
Okay.
And it should be noted, just for the record, if we're talking about this, that our SDCs are actually going down. as
Yes,
part of that proposal, not,
The proposal is that SDCs
Right.
will be reduced. Water SDCs will be reduced.
Then are you going to be amending page 6 because it directly says a water rate increase of 4% and a 20% reduction in SDCs are included in this proposed budget? So are you saying that is incorrect? Yes.
So should we just say are not included?
We did not include the additional revenue.
Okay, okay,
so I need to reword the sentence.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
do we need to make a motion to that to happen, or are you just gonna okay, so you'll reword on page 6?
Editorial.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Good.
Scrivener's error, thank you.
Scrivener's error.
All right.
Scrivener.
Anything else for Craig on water? And then Craig, you're still there for sanitary.
On the actual water, as far as the seasonals too, just so, the ones that we're going to use for the meter dig out, I see that being now and done, and when the project's done, moving on. So it's not something that's going to be there forever. The fire hydrants part of it, we're not going to be able to get all the fire hydrants done in one season, especially if you only can get somebody for 2 months out of the year. So I mean, that's just how it's going to go. So I can tell you that it's not one that we're looking to keep around. We're just looking for somebody to help us now. Sanitary, I don't think I need, we have a little over 60 miles or so of sanitary. Our main goal in sanitary is to meet Clean Water Services mandates to our permit. We clean our sanitary lines every 4 years, so they're broke down throughout the city. We video them every 7 years, and that's where our maintenance projects come out of, usually is video inspection. We do annual inspections of city businesses to ensure fat, oil, and grease, our fog compliance program. And then we also clean our sanitary. We have, there's certain parts of the city actually get twice a year, especially in the commercial where we have a lot of grease lines. They actually get cleaned twice a year instead of every 4 years. And then we actually are required to inspect our manholes, half of them. The city we'll be doing half of the city manholes this year.
Is a 7-year scope standard for cities?
Yeah, it's pretty, it just depends. There's some places in Clean Water Services requirements, it is 7 years, and that was every 7 years you have to, and it's not that you wait every 7 years and you go do your whole city. We're required to do it so much per year.
Right.
And some cities go a couple years and they back up, but we're not staffed to be able to do that. You get to Beaverton and some of the larger cities, they can do some of those things because they're a lot bigger. We're not that way here. So we break it down.
So in budgeting the scopes in terms of a preventative measure for the city, do you propose additional scopes in areas that are have more mature tree growth?
So we have certain hot spots throughout the city, we call them.
Yeah.
That get it more than every 4 years. And not just the grease, we have monthlies and we have stuff that gets done every 2 weeks. Could be part of bad design back when it went in, when the subdivisions went in.
Right.
There's a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
We also do root foaming of our tree systems that have roots in our sewers. So there's a
Okay.
variety of ways that we deal. That's another program that's not listed here, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
What I can tell you is the city of Sherwood is, when we sit down with our numbers at Clean Water Services, we either below Clean Water Services numbers for cleaning, for video inspections. It's all a big deal throughout Washington County to make sure we're competitive with each other. So I see no big issues there. Like I said, our big deal is to meet our performance. And those really are, there's some money in here for a manhole rehabilitation program, which we started a couple of years ago, all the raised manholes, especially in the Woodhaven area, when they used a material that's defective, and we actually are going in and bringing them down to standard, especially in the areas where paving and stuff too. So there's $25,000 in here for that. We have $25,000 for emergency repairs in this budget, which $25,000, if you actually had a big repair, doesn't go very far. But we do have $25,000 in here, and then we actually have about there's some small equipment replacement that's in the fleet budget that comes out of the sanitary of about $4,000. So, and one of the pieces of equipment is a detector, a gas monitor that the employees wear when they go in confined space. That's a big portion of that. So that's really what's in the sanitary budget. There's no projects this year. besides the manhole stuff.
Linda?
So, obviously, if the water rate increase isn't reflected in here, neither would be the clean water services increase. So, for those people who may not know, of course, Clean Water Services is our sanitary provider, which is a separate municipality. And so I have a couple pieces of information and a question for Craig. So we collect those fees on the water bill, and I have this repeated conversation with everybody every year, especially at summertime. Why is my water bill so high? Well, 60% of the water bill is Clean Water Services. 40% is water, at least my water bill when I break it out. So I believe for 2015, Clean Water Services is increasing their rates 3.7%. But in 2014, it was 6%, and in 2013, it was 8%. So if we think we're fee happy or tax increase happy, you might want to take a look at Clean Water Services, because over a 3-year period, they've increased their rates 17.7% in a 3-year period. And we collect that, much like a garnishment on a check. And I think that that's confusing for a lot of people to a certain extent, not realizing that while your staff does all the service and upkeep, we don't recoup 100% of that cost from Clean Water Services, correct? So in your estimate, what do you think that we expense just to maintain our system of sanitary, storm, versus what we get reimbursed for from Clean Water Services?
We do get a percentage of the charge, and we have our own surcharge as well. I want to say 65 cents.
It's pretty close.
Very, very small. And that is enough to cover our annual expense, not much more.
Okay.
So if we have big projects or, maintenance projects that we need to do, this is a fund where we do kind of run really tight with from year to year. I will say we're going to, and we'll talk about this in the capital side, but we are going to update our sanitary and storm master plans this year. And in the process of that, we will be updating the SDC and the rates as well, just like we did for water. And at that point, we'll evaluate whether our surcharge is appropriate. With the continual increases from Clean Water Services, what do we need to do with our surcharge? So that will be all part of that process that we go through later this year.
Okay, but just to clarify, the increases from Clean Water Services are not passed through to us.
Just our little minuscule proportion of what we receive.
So if our fee is 50 cents and they raise their fee 10%, then we get 5 more cents? Okay. Thank you.
And just so everybody, Clean Water Services has pretty much said that you can expect 3 to 5% rate increases every year from here on out. So just so everybody knows that.
So I have a question, and part of this is being a new counselor, I'm not as familiar.
Yeah.
Are we stuck with Clean Water Services? Can we send someone out and find out if there's other options? Local options, something, I don't know.
Unless we want to get into the treatment business, we're stuck with Clean Water Services and go get our own permit and build a treatment plant, which the city used to have back in the early days before they combined, all the cities in Washington County combined with Clean Water Service. Most of their stuff goes to the treatment part of, they have a big capital improvement projects at the treatment plants.
Which makes it much easier to increase 17% in 3 years when you don't have any other choices.
If that's the number, I do know that they've had rate increases every year.
Okay.
For storm and sanitary.
Thanks.
Julie, assuming that council does some action on water rates and sewer rates in the next few months, how does that affect the budget that we're looking to adopt?
It will increase our revenue a little bit. The sanitary, we get such a small portion of it, it doesn't make that big of a difference annually. The water, it will increase the revenue, but that gets moved forward to future years when we have those projects coming based on the master plan that has.
So there may be increases in revenue, but you won't have authorizations to spend that increase. So basically it just goes into the contingency fund.
Yep. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on sanitary? And then that takes us to storm.
So I won't go through exactly what we do for description since it's there, but some of the operations we do is storm line cleaning. It's done every 6 years. Catch basins cleanings. Our sump catch basins get cleaned every year in the city. I think there's about 1,851 of them. Our water quality manholes are completed twice a year. We treat catch basins for mosquitoes, West Nile virus. We do our curbside leaf program, which is in November and December. We plant trees for compliance to the Healthy Streams program, and we also provide monthly street sweeping. Some of the stuff that's in this year's budget is what I'd already talked about for the performance and meeting clean water services standards. Retrofit 4 unsumped catch basins to sumped. Most of the time, there's about 14,000 in there for that. Most of the time, that's in paving areas. Installation of a new storm system on Tualatin Street, about $100,000 there. Installation of a new storm system on Highland Drive, which is about $150,000, which goes in with the street project there. There's a few different areas of water quality facilities we need to core the debris out throughout the city, as well as rebuild the Cedar View Estates swale water treatment area. We have that's about $120,000 between the coring and that. Manhole rehabilitation of $25,000. Inspection and plant establishments for maintenance projects off of Wildlife Haven over here is about $5,500, or sorry, about $7,500, as well as about $5,500 for any storm line repairs in the next year. And again, the main deal is to meet our permit requirements in this program. Any questions?
I have a question on the
Yeah.
street sweeping. Do we contract that out, or does the city do that?
Currently, Clean Water Services is we contract with Clean Water Services. We were notified that back in January, we've been going back and forth if we were going to contract it out or continue using Clean Water Services, and they pretty much notified us that they weren't interested in continuing our street sweeping because of their manpower, and they have offered up the city of Sherwood their used sweeper. They're getting a new sweeper, so we are in the middle of purchasing that. And the plan is once the AMI project, we're already about 2 weeks of staff time down in that side since we have about 3,000 meters in, close to 3,000 already. That staff person will be taking over the role of the street sweeping operation for those 2 weeks. So as you see in our FTEs, we move people around. We talk about 8. You might see one year you have 8.54 in water, and you see 2.9 in sanitary, and right on down. We move those staff members around, and they're all trained in all those areas, and we're able to move those staff members around with the workload that we have. So, like I said, one year you might see 8.5 in water, might seem high. The next year you might see it shift over to storm because of projects that we have. So, but as far as street sweeping, so that was the plan when we went to the AMI project is to be able to put that staff person as we started reducing some of those costs to be able to put them back into maintenance. So right now in this budget, because I didn't know where we were going to be, it is in the contracted services, but because I didn't know at the time we put this together when Clean Water Services would be getting rid of their sweeper. So, and it will be a little bit cheaper for us to do the actual sweeping service.
Sweeper.
A sweeper, when you buy a brand new one, is about $180,000, but we've actually purchased this one through them for about $25,000. So it's about 5 years old, 6 years old.
So, Craig, is that the other operating materials and supplies, $25,000 line item? Is that what that is?
So the $25,000 line item of O&M is dump fees. So that's our debris that we remove from the catch basins. It's our debris that we clean from our storm lines. It's our debris. It's our manhole rings. It's the stuff we buy to make the system go. We dump our debris in Hillsboro. So really, it's just a lot of material. There's probably 11 or 12,000, if not a little bit more than that, of that 25. That's just material that we remove off the streets. And then there's the street sweeping costs that we will incur too from the sweeper.
Julie, I have a question for you. In the questions that I posed to you this last week, you had mentioned that there was an error. Is this not a good time to address this?
It's in the capital side.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
We're almost there.
Okay. Anything else for storm operations? Okay. Greg, thank you very much, sir. And then we're on to the enterprise funds for telecommunications. Yeah.
Brad will be out.
Not a problem. And just as a kind of a reminder, I know it's been drilled into me a lot from previous budgets, is enterprise funds are funds within themselves, which is they generate their own revenue, they have their own expenses, and we're not really allowed to mix and match them into some other places. So just keep that in mind. They're their own little entity.
Hello again. I'll just give you just a very quick brief overview of Sherwood Broadband, since some of you probably don't know what Sherwood Broadband is and what it isn't. So, fiber optic based telecommunications utility. So the city put a lot of fiber on the ground years ago for its own purposes, and sometime shortly after decided to lease excess capacity to other service providers. So primarily what it is. So we lease excess capacity to other entities who then sell finished services. So finished services being internet, television, TV. We don't play in that space. We lease the capacity that is in the fiber. We also do some other similar services, but we're really not in the finished services business. So if somebody wanted to build a link between business A and business B in Sherwood, we would provide them that. But if they wanted to get internet, we wouldn't do that. So just wanted to clarify that in case you guys had any questions. We run on a pretty shoestring budget. This year, we only have one project, and that's to acquire some fiber management software. Right now, we have documentation and maps of our network in various forms. I would like to acquire an integrated piece of software to kind of manage all of that. That's the big one. We did have a couple increases in some of the line items. I thought I would just go through them real quick so you can kind of know where the increases came from. On page 85, other purchase services had an increase. That increase is directly related to new revenue. We had to acquire some additional space at one of our main data centers for a customer who's then paying us for some space. So that's where that increase came in. And then other professional technical services, we lost a staff member this year, and instead of hiring that position in that same role, we are contracting some services out until council can kind of decide on the next phase of Sherwood Broadband after we go through the business plan and answer some of those questions. So those are the two big increases. Revenue was just a very slight increase this year. There's a couple opportunities on the horizon that are promising that look really good for this coming fiscal year for revenue-wise, but no signed contracts yet. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
I just have a quick question. What percent of the total capacity is actually leased right now? And then what is the potential for additional lease, like with these two new?
Yeah,
is that what you're looking at?
lots. It's hard to explain because we lease the fiber, the physical fiber, but then we also have we lease capacity on our existing network. So there's lots and lots of capacity.
Okay.
We won't run out. So I know that's not a not a good response. That's a very untechnical response to a technical question. But yeah,
it's good.
we've got lots of capacity.
It reminds me of BPA lines
Yeah.
leasing capacity on their electrical.
So I can tell you that I've met with almost every Washington County city they're all building fiber right now for their own purposes and even considering leasing capacity. So this is not new to anybody in city government anymore.
And one of the things coming attractions for the council will be a work session about Sherwood Broadband. So you're going to get a lot more history about how we got here, what do we have, and what are the opportunities to expand if we wanted to expand. So you'll learn a lot more probably August about broadband.
And just a statistic, there's about 80 locations on the network now. 50 of them are city and school district locations. So we're by far and above the biggest user of the network. So.
And there is, again, from experience from previous budgets, a notable item, which is that the debt services.
Last year for the debt payment, so revenue and expense will look a lot better next year. The debt will be paid off.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So I have a silly question. Why do we pay $88,000 for internet access?
That's a lot of different lines. So we have data center space that the core of the network sits in, and we're leasing retail space essentially from another property owner. It is internet. It's backup internet. It is one of our customers has some other redundancy that we pay for and then provision back to them. So it's not just internet. It's a whole slew of things. I can give you the breakdown if you'd like.
I just think it was an extremely large charge. I didn't understand that. But I don't need the breakdown.
Yeah, it's not just internet. It's leasing of data center space, which comes at a premium.
Okay. Anything else for the telecommunications fund? And that
I have a question.
Yes, Susan.
Do we have a current business plan that you're working off of? I know that we talked about that before, and I'm assuming that that's probably part of the August work session.
Yes, we have a business plan. I think it was dated around 2010, 11, 12, and we're looking to revise that.
And are you expecting for next year, are you expecting a lot of increases based on what you guys are planning on? Or are we talking about this as kind of a stabilized enterprise fund for the city, or?
I think everything's on the table as to what we do next. So it's just, since the debt is paid back, the environment that the utility operates in is different, and we need to revise the business plan accordingly, and that'll be something council will get to decide on.
Okay. I think that's it, Brad.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Takes us on to item D, which is review of capital projects and funds. Julie. Julie and Julia, that is correct.
Okay, so we are on page 35 in your budget. And I'll give you a brief overview of what this very tiny print is, as I was told earlier. So what this is this is a projection for the next 5 years of what our capital projects are going to be. The only year that is somewhat certain is next year. Every year after that is a best guess of what we might have funding for, what the priorities might be. These can, most likely, the out years will change once we do the master plans that we have planned, because we're going to do sanitary, storm, and parks. So that will change what our priorities are and what we're going to do in the future. As well as we will have a new capital improvement plan that will be being brought before council on June 16th as well. That night is just full. It's about this thick, and it is awesome. Bob and his group have done an amazing job putting this together, and it will have a 1-year summary of what we're doing for the next year, a 5-year summary, and then it will have information for everything that's in all of our master plans. So there will be sheets for each project from the master plan. We're not quite finished. We're still doing final tweaks and printing and stuff. That's why we don't have it for this group, but that is coming to you guys on the 16th of June as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Julia to talk about the projects.
And I'm not going to necessarily go into detail about everything that's on the list unless you want me to. As Julie said, the 15-16 CIP year is really what we're talking about. And I want to just explain briefly how we get these projects on the list. And the first thing is they're all identified in existing plans or council goals that have been set. And the first priority is projects that we're already working on, projects that we've already committed to. So, for example, Woodhaven Park is in there. Columbia Street Water Quality Facility are in there because they're projects that we've already started and we're allocating resources to finish. The stormwater and sanitary sewer master plans are in there because we started them and we're going to finish them. And then we also look at projects that are in, like, for example, there's some projects in the transportation system plan that when we did the master plan update, we identified. We also get input throughout the year. We get feedback from council. We look at how much money we have. We look at what sort of is the best bang for the buck and kind of put all that together and take the projects that are already identified in the master plan and identify which ones we recommend carrying forward for this year. What is going to be in the CIP that Julie mentioned that's going to council on June 16th is everything that's looked at that leads us to this recommendation. But the 15-16 recommendation is primarily projects that we've already started and we're going to finish out. On page 36 through 38 of the budget document is a description of all those projects. So I don't know if you have specific questions on any one that you'd like me to go into detail over.
I will address the error now, Mirta.
Yes.
So in the street capital fund, I accidentally did a cut and paste from last year and double counted a project. So in the motion that somebody later can make, I have written an adjustment to reduce the street capital budget by that dollar amount. So it's about $900,000. So we will be bringing that budget down.
And where's that number located?
It is on page 72. And it's in the infrastructure line.
About 2/3 down the page? Okay. And so that number should be what instead of what?
395.5 instead of 1,295,000.
395. 500. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I'm impressed because several of you actually found that.
Okay. Julie, I did have one question. I know from some of the water presentations that I saw at the work session with the city council that there may be some major construction occurring on 12th and Sherwood Highway as Washington County puts in their water infrastructure. Is there opportunities or leverage that the city can use on programs or improvements that they have in that area?
On Tualatin Sherwood Road?
Yeah, and where it crosses 99W, and I mean, there's going to be some major construction
Yeah,
there.
that's actually a county facility, so they actually already are working on the Tualatin Sherwood Road widening project, and certainly there are going to be opportunities to coordinate that project and leverage the work that's being done there. But that's not something that we put into our capital improvement program because it's not our project to fund.
Right. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on capital improvement plan? Yes, Linda.
So obviously I know that the first column, 15-16, is what you planned. But what I don't see in the next 5 years is Upper Pine.
And that is certainly something that as we go into future years, we can, based on council direction and need and funding, we can look at. The 5-year CIP is really just sort of placeholders and kind of this is where we're heading, this is what we're thinking, but that changes as needs and priorities may adjust. So, for example, we invested some money in the Tonkin area sanitary sewer upgrade because we're trying to position the ability to serve that area. If there's another area that was suddenly booming, we might need to shift resources, or we might, if that area does in fact annex into the city, we might need to provide more resources, more transportation funds or that kind of thing. So the 5-year CIP can change based on what's happening in the community and priorities.
So I have a question on the sanitary sewer master plan update. You have an estimated cost of 150,000, and for fiscal year 15-16, it's 90. So I'm assuming that that just means it carries over to the next.
We've already
or
started it.
I'm
right.
sorry, that's right.
So that's
Okay,
what we
yep,
expect
yep,
to have
right,
left
okay.
into next year.
And I will say, with capital, this is probably the one area where we come back with supplementals or appropriation transfers the most, because we try really hard to get these projects done before July 1, and construction season is when it starts being dry, and depending on the year, that could be April, it could be June. And so that affects when we complete projects. So you will see a lot of times our capital projects, we will come back and say, okay, we could not complete it before June 30th, so we need to roll some money over into the next year. And that's just a timing thing. It doesn't mean we're spending more money, it's just when we're spending the money.
And going back to Councilor Robinson's question about a 2-year budget, if we went to a 2-year budget like other cities, would we be able to do a better job of managing that? Because we'd
Yes.
have a 2-year time frame to do capital projects rather than a year.
Yes.
So you'd probably see less supplemental budgets in that 2-year process, which would be an advantage to a 2-year budget.
It would.
Okay,
So I have some questions. So, if we are not in agreement with some of the proposed projects on this list, can we shift this money to be used elsewhere, or does it have to stay within the capital improvement plan portion of the budget?
Yeah, Julie, maybe you can explain that a little.
You can take projects off the list, but whatever that money is, it has to stay in that fund. We can't use it elsewhere.
Okay.
So you couldn't take a capital project off and hire another police officer?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And that's the enterprise fund part.
There's state laws regarding SDCs, and that's where most of this revenue comes from, and you cannot, absolutely cannot do that.
Right. So my own opinion is that as to the Oregon Street, Tonquin Road pre-design, 25,000, and the Tonquin Employment Area sanitary upgrade, to me, seems less of a priority than perhaps other projects that we could be doing, because those appear to be more anticipatory of future development when there's more of a need in other areas.
The Tonkin Employment Area sanitary sewer upgrade is 99% done. There's about, we already spent, the budget was 1.3 million, and we've got $100,000 left because there's just a little bit that hasn't been able to be completed. The Oregon improvements at Tonkin and Murdoch is really where am I?
Yeah,
The
you're
Oregon
right.
Street Tonkin Road pre-design. That's really to try to get a better estimate of what the costs will be and what the impact will be, so that when we're advocating to Washington County through their MISTIP process, or Metro through the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program process, we have better and more information so that we can actually get other outside funding sources. That's kind of the hope there, and to really get a better idea of what that budget and impact might be, so that it can inform future funding.
And I'd support that, because that's really positioning for when Southwest 124th comes through. We need to be ready if and when we get that, when we get Tonkin Employment Area going. We really need to position ourselves for.
Well, my concern really is that we're updating all of our master plans. And as a result of the master plans, we get all these capital improvement projects out of those master plans, that then we forecast how much revenue we need to save up in order to have those. So my major concern in the budget this year is we're updating all those plans with anticipating future projects, because they're so far behind in their current status. I don't want to see a bunch of tax increases and rate increases for all of these different plans that we're updating, when we can manage the money a little better internally, perhaps, on projects. So is there, can you assure me that as a result of updating all these plans for all these new capital improvement projects, that we're not going to be, significantly raising taxes and?
No.
No.
Very simple.
Yeah, that said, I mean, so the transportation system plan, that already has been updated, and what we've got budgeted in that is an SDC and rate study to see if we need to modify the system development charges and rates. It very well could go down as, through that exploration process, and there's a good possibility that will go down because we also have the Washington County Transportation Development Tax. The Storm and Sanitary Sewer Master Plan, I don't know yet, but I have no reason to believe it will go up significantly, but I don't know. But that's the process that we have to go through to identify what do we need, what's the capacity, what are the improvements. And for the most part, what we would be dealing with is the system development charges that would be attributed to development when it comes in and not taxpayers. Am I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Similar to the water issue, the SDCs that were reduced because we had an evaluation of our water system.
Okay. Any additional questions for Julia?
I have a few.
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, when we're talking about the SDC and the rate studies, we put those out for RFPs, is that right?
That is a component of the master plan contract that was put out for an RFP.
Did you say we do or we don't?
It was part of the master plan contract that was put out for an RFP. It's not a separate contract. It's part of the contract for the master plans themselves.
Okay, and then do we have the same, are they the same people that are doing these master plans for us, or do we have, different bids from different companies that have been awarded?
We do an RFP process, and anybody who wants to respond can. Our water master plan was done by MSA, and the contracts for our storm and sanitary plans are also through MSA. We have not done a RFP yet for parks. I don't imagine MSA will be the contractor for them because they don't do parks. So, when we put those out, we advertise them in many different places, and sometimes we get a lot of response and sometimes we don't. And I think with the water,
And if we have cost savings from doing the RFPs and having the competition, where does that, we have a certain amount that we're planning for. What happens if instead of like the transportation SDCs, say that came in at 50,000 instead of the 76, what do we do with that?
it just stays in the fund and is available for future use on other projects.
Okay.
One thing as staff, just because you approve the budget with this dollar amount doesn't mean we have to spend every last penny of it. We are very, very fiscally responsible in reviewing RFPs, bids, and that sort of thing, and getting the best bang for our buck. And so we frequently, and we have it projected again this year, that we will be starting the year with a larger beginning balance than what we projected. And so just because it's approved doesn't mean we will spend it if we don't need it.
And at what point do you go for the, I mean, there's some of those line items that you can do at the staff level where you can move the monies around, is that right? But at some point you would have to come, at what level do you come back for the supplemental?
The appropriation levels, during the training, I provided a handout of what those levels were. But basically, the administration division, that total expense is the total that the administration division has. So all of those departments you heard earlier that are in administration, HR, finance, IT, all of us combined cannot go over that bottom line. So if Joe needs more money for a special project or something that comes up and I am not going to spend money because I don't need it for this project, we can move it between our departments, but you can't overspend that total for the division. If we need more, we will either come back with a supplemental, or if another division has excess, we will come back with an appropriation transfer to move the authority to spend it in one division to another. And I actually will be bringing one of those forward in June for the end of the year for our current budget, to just move money between departments that it's already appropriated so that we don't have to take it out of contingency.
Julie, within the capital improvement plan, though, is it at the line item level or the transportation level? I think that's
The total, the transportation
total.
level.
I think that was Susan's question.
Yes.
Probably, if you have a question or statement, probably should turn on your mic so it gets on the record.
Thank you. I just stated within each fund, so within the transportation fund on page 35, those line items can be interchanged
Yes.
according to what staff's recommendations are.
Yes.
But to move between them, that would be a site council decision.
Yes, for the enterprise funds, we can't move money between them.
Right.
Unless, there are times where if we're doing a water project and we need, and often, actually, they try very hard to coordinate when we do maintenance projects, to coordinate with engineering for capital projects. So we're not tearing up a street to fix a sewer line, and then 2 years later, we're tearing up the street to replace it. We try to coordinate those kinds of projects so we're getting efficiencies and not ruining our own infrastructure. And so when we have those kinds of projects that it's multiple things happening, then yes, we will spend multiple funds money on that one project because it may be a sewer and a street project or a water and a street project.
Did we answer your question, Susan?
Yes, and I have another question also on that CIP, so
Then you better ask it.
go ahead. Okay, so, and this goes back to one of the first questions that I talked to Julie about and asked about. When we have annexations into our town, whether it's Brookman or whether it's the Tonkin employment area, the fundamental question that I had is when those are presented to the town for annexation purposes, the presentation, as part of that presentation, is that those annexed areas are responsible for their infrastructure. And so, one, I'm asking, is that accurate? And two, when we commit funds into, like if we look on page 35 at the water fund, expansion to TEA loop, and there's an example there, or if we talk about expansion to Brookman, what are those funds for those purposes belong to the city of Sherwood residents that are currently in the town, or is that something that will be back charged to those areas if and when they're annexed and or developed?
So I think I can respond, and then Julie, if you want to add to that. Basically, development pays for itself through the system development charges and or as development occurs through the requirements of that development. So, for example, when we did the Tonkin Employment Area Sanitary Sewer upgrade, we were spending system development charges that had been paid for by development, but also with the expectation that when that area came in, they would also be paying system development charges too, and that money would be spent on other projects that were going to be necessary in the city. So, Julie, do you want to add? Okay. So, yeah, development pays for itself in those expansion areas most of the time. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about other areas in North Bethany and jurisdictions that are struggling with that, but that's a struggle that they have to resolve before areas are developed. But our system development charges. And again, that's why we want to do our rate study, is to make sure that we are charging what we need to be charging to make sure that development pays for itself.
Anything else, Susan?
No.
Okay. That pretty much completes the presentation of the budget. So at this point, unless there are some specific questions or clarifications you'd like from Julie, I would suggest that we open up for public comment. So anybody else have any questions for Julie before we proceed? Okay, so what's my script here? Okay. All right, so I am now going to open the meeting to accept public comment on the 2015-2016 City of Sherwood budget. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit them to the budget officer. The committee chair will then recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the committee chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. Please speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your testimony to 4 minutes. I have, actually, I think Bill was first, so Bill Middleton. Press it until it, yeah, there you
There
go.
it goes. Bill Middleton, I'm a Sherwood resident. I look forward to the year actually when the staff comes back and says we can make do with what we have and let's give back to the citizens. You'll see this in this budget. Personnel, other than the fact that we do need parks workers, is just money gone. We can't ever recover that. The statistics they give sometimes are a little skewed. Right now, our police department, if you read their stats, they run 90% free time. So that means 90% they get to drive around in free time. The mayor promised that we are going to do the study on the police department. Rather than hiring an officer now, have them do the study, an independent study. And it's not the decision of some committee. This is the decision for council because we elected you. We didn't elect the committees. They can give recommendations. Come back with a 3-year plan and let the people vote on it. They're going to come back every year wanting more and more staff. We couldn't even build our parks because we don't have the money. If we don't hire the staff that's not necessary other than parks, which is obviously necessary because we're continue to add parks, we could actually go out there and build a skateboard park. We could add another dog park on the other side of the city. We could build Woodhaven Park. We could give back to the citizens, not take from them. Majority of department heads don't pay taxes in this city. So I'm a taxpayer, you're a taxpayer. We elected a new council because the people wanted change. They didn't want to do the same thing, throwing staff at stuff with no real information or any kind of backup to it. He doesn't want the staffing level study, and this has been going on for over 1.5 years. The city manager was supposed to come up with a proposal because he's got too much management staff, and he knows that. And he even said that to the city manager. He doesn't want his management staff touched. We could adjust the police department to have enough officers on nights by just having some of your supervisors work nights. Last time we discussed this with the police department, he said he has 8 to 9 people working day shift. Why, I don't know. We don't need the command staff we have. One of them's already applying elsewhere anyway, but we could actually streamline our departments. We just built a new art center. Don't throw another staff member over there. Let's sit back a year and see how we really judge that and see if we need that person. And I don't think it's out of line for somebody to vacuum their own floor. Nobody's overqualified for anything. You're qualified and you do your job. Let's give back, as you ran, when you ran for council, to the people. Let's do all these things we want to do. Those blocks have been out there for 4 years. We know some kid's going to get hit someday, but we keep putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. Do what you said you did when you ran and think of the people. You do it on stats. You do it on what the public wants. I talked to a couple of our counselors, and I know they want what the public wants. not just what staff wants. So let's think of the people for a change. That's why you're elected. Let's go and think of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Eugene Stewart?
Eugene Stewart, property owner, not a resident. I live just outside of Sherwood. One of the things I'd like to know, or hopefully it'll be discussed, is the seniors, what's going on there. And when we talk about that, I also think about unfunded liabilities, even though you don't have to do anything about it now. The thing is that on PERS, if that unfunded liability is going to go up, the only way it's going to get paid for is by increasing PERS. And I think there should be some discussion about, can we get that down? Should we be working to get it down to zero? How do we do it? We do it through the budgeting process. I noticed business license fees is under community development, under planning. Shouldn't those fees be used for something that helps businesses that are already here? Why is it there? I know the original reason for business license fee, it's probably just revenue at this point. But why are they put there? Why aren't they put back in the general fund? One of the things that really isn't discussed is what's going to happen with our transportation. Sitting on when we did the TSP or TPS review, look at that. They have a list of projects that's 7 to 10 times what they can fund. So how are we going to grow? Have you not noticed driving around? This week, 4 out of 4 days, there's been I-5 blocked, and that's coming out this way. And we keep trying to push more traffic towards it. So I don't think we're doing the citizens right by not trying to plan for the future as we go. And, what is the transportation system we need? We can't all ride buses. That doesn't work. So we need lanes of road. But yet, the best example I go by it every morning is Bull Mountain. That's the first roadblock you hit going down 99W. And it is a tremendous impact on the traffic. And what do you think as we develop out here? We're just going to impact it more and more. And so why would people want to go to the Tonquin employment area if they need transportation and they can't get to the freeways? 124th isn't going to do that much for it, in my opinion. Just looking at it, so I think this budget really, we need to look at the future. We've been playing catch up for so long. We don't look at the future. How can we do it? How do we get more jobs here so our people can live in the area and they don't have to cause these traffic problems that we have? But nobody talks about that. How do we get balance? And I don't think this budget balances too much. And the question is, how does it serve the people? I don't know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eugene. And William Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank you for putting this information on the website. I was able to download it and actually have a little bit of information instead of just picking it up at the DS there. So I appreciate that. Thank you. In looking at it, I was looking at the last week when I commented about the FTEs, having this information clarified that. So I appreciate that, and it seems appropriate. One of my questions, though, is there's, I don't know, shy of 4 personnel or so that are in the finance department handling bills and that sort of thing. Are they billed, if you look at salaries and wages, are there salaries and wages in the finance department, or would they be in, like, the water department if they were?
No, all of the departments and administration are charged to our own departments, and then our costs are spread out through other funds through overhead.
Okay, so that's the $600,000 of overhead?
Mhm.
Okay. Which seemed high when I look at it. If I just were to, well, if I added up the 3 enterprise funds, it's about $600,000 of overhead going from the enterprise funds into the general fund. And so what I did, just rough, I said, okay, let's say 20% of city manager's office, 20% of the council, 15% of HR, just their total budget. If you add all that up, it's like around 300,000. And so it seemed high. So it was just a comment. The second largest item in the budget, other than salaries, was in the water fund under other departments, other expenses, just as said, other operating materials and supplies. It was $682,000. So there wasn't a description of what that $682,000 was for. The other thing, when I went through the budget, I was surprised about franchise fees. You know, within the, when I look at my Northwest Natural, it's got a line item here on franchise fees. My Comcast bill has franchise fees. The utility bill does not list franchise fees. And so 5% of my bill is really a tax. And so as a resident, I don't know that. You know, I don't know that 5% of my bill is a tax. And so I think it might be informative to the public to understand that they are paying a tax on their utility bills. So when you add the franchise fee and the admin fee, it's just shy of $1 million going from the enterprise funds into the general fund. And I understand that. I understand through my experience, I understand that. But I didn't see documentation or justification, particularly of the overhead costs that were in there. So, and it's a real minor thing, but it's been mentioned a couple of times about enterprise funds can only be used on enterprise accounts. And so it's, again, the Public Works Department mentioned that they maintain 8,000 water sprinkler heads. But I didn't see any money going from the general fund to the enterprise fund to pay a water bill. And so, again, it's a minor thing, but I think it's appropriate that funds be allocated properly and that the general public has an understanding of where they're being taxed, where they're being fees, and how that money is being utilized. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? If not, I will close the public comment portion of our meeting this evening. Now, before we proceed, I guess the committee needs to make a discussion. We are at the 9 o'clock hour, which... Thank you very much. And so just to reiterate for the record, we're closing the public comment, so thank you very much. Before we proceed, we are at the 9 o'clock hour, and this is when we would normally be scheduled to complete this meeting. My rough guess is we probably have another hour between committee discussion and then on to the urban renewal. So the question is, does the committee wish to remain and continue discussion, or do we wish to close the meeting and plan on the third session? Prasanna.
I would like to close the meeting and have a third session so that we can get good clarity in looking at the budget and not have to plow through and be tired and get a little droopy and not be paying attention to the details. So that's
I
my
won't
motion
argue
is-
with you in as much bad decisions made at,
That's
or
right.
made at late hours.
No,
But
no need to
okay,
push through.
that's one opinion. Can we have some other opinions, please?
I would probably say stay because I can't be at the third meeting, so
Well,
for
I
no
know-
other reason than I
I know
couldn't
that
be there.
Counselor King cannot be at the third meeting either, and I believe Counselor Henderson cannot either. Is there anybody else that can't be here next week?
well, we will still have a quorum. Even that is correct. Any other questions, comments? At this point, I think I would probably put it up for a vote. I think is probably the best and most fair way to make the decision. So, I guess the motion. Well, Chrisana, you'd probably be the best one to make the motion.
I move we close our current, or I don't really know if we recess.
Recess.
Thank you. Because I'm like, you don't close it. I move that we recess our current budget committee until next Wednesday, scheduled 6 p.m.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Susan. Any additional discussion?
I'll pipe in at this point, and I think we should stay a little longer till perhaps 9:30, and at least get some council discussion or committee discussion, because what I foresee is that there's going to be questions that might be answered in the next week, and that the input from the committee would be very helpful to staff to be able to prepare for that final session. If there's to be any changes to what's been proposed, I think it would be helpful to have all of us who are present tonight at least get a chance to address some potential changes.
So should I take that as a motion to amend?
What would be an entirely different motion.
Yeah,
Right.
I withdraw my motion, and
Very good.
I would move that we continue our meeting until 9:30, and at that point, we readdress the time issue.
Susan, the motion is withdrawn. You made the second. Are you withdrawing your second?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion has been withdrawn, so we're open for another motion.
And I'll move that we continue our committee meeting this evening until 9:38 p.m.
I second.
And reconvene the remainder of our entire budget process next Wednesday.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
We have two in opposition? Three? Well, the motion does carry, so therefore we will continue until 9:30. The committee is open for discussion at this point on the budget. How would you, I guess the best bet would be if anybody has some specific motions in the adjustments of the budget, I would suggest that you make that motion and then we can discuss it. That's probably a better way to track the discussions rather than just opening the field up for anything you want to say. So, do we have any motions on the budget?
It might be helpful to hear, especially from the people who won't be here next week, their thoughts. If any of you who are not going to be here have any comments, discussion.
And in actual fact, I've been also reminded that we do have one motion that we should make right away, which is to move to approve, well, no, okay, that's the final, so, okay, never mind. Sorry about that. All right, well, I guess then maybe the best bet would be to move around the table. Linda, do you have some comments or discussions you'd like to make on the budget?
Well, obviously, the city budget is 95% of it, but I have some questions and things I'd like to propose about urban renewal, but if we're not going to get to that tonight, then there's no point in bringing it up, because if we're not going to get past page 1, then we're not going to get to page 2. So, I don't have any substantial changes to the budget. But I see the budget process as an opportunity to get feedback from citizens who are here tonight, as well as those who serve on the committee, because of course we get another chance to look at this in June. But we've talked about a number of things that people would like to get done that maybe could be done through urban renewal money, but we haven't talked about that yet, so. I'm sort of, in between, before.
I don't know maybe if you can find a surrogate who will carry some of your questions forward at the next meeting, that might help.
Yeah, I don't really have questions, I have proposals, but,
Okay. Well,
I understand the
right.
position we're in, and.
Right. If you would like to forward those to me, I will make sure they at least get before the committee. Okay. Brian, do you have, I know you said you weren't going to be able to be here next week, is that correct? Or?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Kurt said.
Oh, great, okay.
Oh, okay. That's what Skype is for.
Councilor Harris won't be here.
Okay, Councilor Harris, would you have some comments?
Might be able to call in, but it's my husband and I's 10-year anniversary, so he probably won't appreciate that.
Yes,
I
I can understand that.
I know. I know.
Just teasing.
I just had a question for the chief, which relates to Bill's comment. When you gave your presentation, you mentioned that your officers on days are really where you're trying to increase your patrol, not nights. And his comment was, put day officers on night, which doesn't at all add up to what you need. Is that correct? Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify.
Kurt, you indicated that you might not be here next week, so. Okay, but is there any comments you'd like to make now, or?
No, I do not have comments right now. Being that this is my first committee, I'm more in a learning stage than anything, so, thank you.
Okay. Julie, we have a committee that's willing to be at least here for the next 22 minutes. We obviously all want to kind of stew a little bit on what we've heard over the last 2 days. Is 22 minutes enough to review urban renewal? Something where Councilor Henderson might be able to add some comments? Can we suspend the current discussions and?
Well, is our committee discussion complete?
No,
No, like
no.
leave it open.
That's
Leave it
why
open.
that I'm suggesting that maybe we can. It doesn't seem. I think everybody kind of wants to think about what they've heard over the last 2 weeks, and so I'm thinking maybe we could suspend the discussion on the city budget, and maybe open the discussion on urban renewal.
Chair, my only concern goes back to what Councilor Robinson said. If there are things that the committee wants to direct staff to do and take advantage of the time between now and next week, we would greatly appreciate that.
So I'm happy to pipe in
Yeah, so
and give you
Please
my
do.
comments.
Please do then.
My feeling is that we should only add a half a staff for the Art Center. I know the need appears to be a full-time position, but given the fact that we don't have space leased and it's taking a large majority of deficit to run the center, I think maybe at least for the time period, a half-staff person would be best. I would like to have a cost estimate from Craig as to what it would cost to remove the monuments in Old Town. I find that's a priority for me. I don't know if it is for the rest of the committee, but I would like to squeeze that into the budget somewhere. And I also wanted to point out that there should be no cell phone charge to city council that I'm aware of. There was $960 associated with that in the budget. And although I think our city and our citizens really appreciate Robin Hood Festival, I am surprised that we spend $10,000 as a donation. And if we are not required to donate that $10,000, I would suggest reducing that to $5,000 so that we could m- move monuments if necessary. Trying to think of just some creative financing. So that was really my few things that I thought I would like to see in the approved budget.
I'll just jump in, and that was actually going to be my, the same suggestion, is to just check into if Craig could look into pricing for removing some of those monuments. I really do feel like it's a safety issue.
It's an engineering.
Engineering,
thing,
I'm
not
sorry,
Craig.
Bob.
We
Okay,
keep asking
Bob.
him to do something.
Bob.
that- Okay,
Yeah.
Bob is in Europe until June 1st. So,
Okay.
I know they've started looking into it and looking at different options, because it's not a matter of just taking them out. We have to replace them with something as a barrier so
Right.
that people know where the sidewalk is versus the street. So I'll be very honest, I don't know that we can get you a cost estimate by next week, because there's too much that has to be done to explore what alternatives there are to
So
do
maybe
that.
just knowing that exploration, which I think you mentioned
Yes.
earlier
Mhm.
tonight, just knowing that is
we
moving
have
forward to
heard,
evaluate
we've heard
that.
from all of you that this is a priority, and I know that they've been looking into it and working on it. So, yeah.
But we could set aside funds to do it. I mean, we could set aside a certain amount of funds that balance the budget still, removing some other items and committing $50,000 or whatever it might be towards that project. It might not be, I mean, clearly it's not going to be 50,000. It'll be much more probably. But I think it's worth at least getting it started.
Can I respond to a couple items? The $960 cell phone stipend is actually for the mayor,
Oh, okay.
who is actually, in my experience, with 5 months, she's on her phone working all the time.
Okay.
So, it's a tool that's the reason we put it there.
Okay.
So,
It's not formalized anymore.
no, it isn't formalized anywhere.
We
So,
have done it in the past.
Yeah.
Prior years.
The other comment about Robin Hood, I've actually in previous budgets proposed either cutting it completely or cutting it in half, and it's always been restored, either by the budget committee or the council. So I've done what you've suggested, Counselor, and we can certainly try that again if that's the will of the budget committee and ultimately the council, but that's an issue we've grappled with in the past as well, in the recent past.
Well, and I'd like to speak to that because I was actually the advocate last year to not cut it when he did cut it out of his budget. And the reason is this. The Robin Hood Festival is the Sherwood Festival. And so it is run by volunteers, nonprofit. They work hours and hours and hours tirelessly to put on this event that is a tradition, that is a Sherwood event. If we do not fund it, we will not have a Robin Hood Festival, and then the city will have to run it. And I can guarantee you that the city running that festival would cost a lot more than $10,000. And I think it would be to a great detriment on our business community, also on just the citizenry, the community pride. I think that it's a small cost to pay. That was my opinion last year. It's still my opinion this year.
And I'm actually the new Robin Hood Festival Association liaison, and I can say that the work that the folks do on the Robin Hood Festival Committee is far beyond the 10,000 that we could provide. And really, perception and the support of the city and the perception that the community has is worth well beyond the 10,000 that we put into it. So I'm recommended that we just stay with it. So.
But I like the cost cutting idea, and I'm interested to hear kind of feedback on the art center issue because art centers are notorious for being loss leaders, and so that's why we have the retail space next to it. It's to offset that, but the big part of making that not a loss leader is to have it constantly going with different things happening in that facility. And if we cut our staff to half that are assigned to that, will we still be able to have that facility going and organizing and planning and let's check it off? can staff speak to that question? Because I think that
Well,
that's
I
a
can
valid question.
certainly invite Kristen because she made the original proposal. My inclination is there's plenty of work, more than enough work to keep a full-time person, not just for the center. Again, as I said last week, Kristen has operated without an admin for many, many years. And this isn't just about the Art Center. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money.
Right. And that's why I wanted her to talk about it, because I mean, I
So-
think it's a valid question.
Sure, absolutely. The position is an admin, so I can't say that it would necessarily affect programs. It may affect operating hours, and if it was a part-time admin, I'd probably just keep them at City Hall, and they'd support me in the department from here, as opposed to having them at the center and trying to also do those duties. Because it would be difficult for them to serve as an admin plus answer the phone and deal with registrations. So we'd do the best we can. We'd probably use more seasonals. So we'd probably increase that budget a little bit and have them come in at times and help so that our regular full-time staff can be doing programs and on-site for rentals and the things that they need to be there for. So, as I said before, part-time's a lot better than what I have now. I feel like we'll probably come back next year and realize that we need more support over there. We have looked at various options. Part of the problem is we just don't have the bodies to cover the front desk. So we've looked at, how can we get more bodies over there? Could I be relocated over there? Could the admin be relocated over there? But there's no space. And so the only option becomes taking over one of the classrooms, which isn't what we built the facility for. And we want to utilize that classroom and have it available for the community. So this was a creative way of dealing with two issues, giving me an admin plus staffing that front desk and allowing the programmers to program and be out promoting the facility.
So I have a question. If there was just a half-time staff, where would that leave Maggie in terms of her ability to go out and promote the facility?
If there is a
and bring
half-time
in
staff,
revenue?
yeah, you would have the two full-time people who are Leah and Maggie now also covering the front desk. So they would need to coordinate their schedules and make sure that somebody is always at the facility. So it would not free up, Maggie would be more tied to the facility, as would Leah, who's also doing events. Though she's going to be sitting over at the facility, she's still doing all the special events for me. So, for example, in the summertime, she won't be there in the facility much on Wednesdays and Fridays when we have music on the green and movies in the park. So that would leave Maggie to cover that all on her own. So Leah's schedule is going to fluctuate depending on what events and activities are happening. She's not just serving that facility, if that makes sense.
Kristen, while we have you,
Yes.
I'm actually less concerned, contrary to Councilor Robinson's opinion on this halftime person, but I am questioning a halftime building monitor. Can you talk a little bit about why that's necessary in this next year?
Sure. So the halftime building monitor is a combination of several building monitors making up to a halftime in hours, if that makes sense. So you might have 3 people and the hours that they're working throughout the year total up to a halftime position.
So
it's not hiring one person part-time, it's hiring 3 people part-time to fill in where needed. So the reason
as needed basis.
on an as-needed basis.
Okay, that
So they are
clarifies.
not typically going to be there unless we have a rental or unless we have a program. In the situation where we don't have as much staff, we may call them in at times. If someone's sick or on vacation, then we only have 2 bodies over there. We don't have a lot of coverage.
Mhm.
So we may need to increase that a little bit to cover those hours. But they're just basically there to protect our asset. And for example, next week we have a program there and they're coming in at 6 p.m. and they're there until midnight. Well, our staff, it would be difficult for them to all stay until midnight. So the building monitor helps with situations like that.
And that's a
making sure that
contracted position, not a City of Sherwood staff position. position?
It's a part-time employee position, a non-benefited position.
Okay.
So they're not going to fall into the range of getting benefits and doing all of that, but they are a hourly paid position. for
And
the
why
city.
wouldn't we consider just contracting out on an as-needed basis until we have a little bit more consistency?
We could, but I believe it'd be more expensive.
Okay,
We would
fair.
pay more on an hourly rate to bring somebody in. We are contracting out some of the technical needs, so someone coming in and running the soundboard or the sound system, and we have some contacts to do that, a very specialized service. But if it was just for a building monitor, I want to say they're paid in the $10 to $12 an hour range. We're going to pay a lot more than that for a contract employee.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify why I disagreed with you, Counselor, on this point in terms of Kristen's request for a halftime admin. And the reason I disagree is because in Kristen's presentation, I heard that this halftime person will support her on a variety of things, not specifically related to just the Center for the Arts. And with that said, I feel like I'm actually surprised that hasn't proposed 2 additional bodies, given the grand scope of work that she has right now. So that is why I disagree.
I have a follow-up. Is that part-time on-call, so as needed, or is that, okay?
Part-time on-call as
yeah.
needed.
Okay.
So they may not work anything for 2 or 3 weeks, and then we might need them for 4 hours. And that's also why you have more than one person, because they may have other jobs and they're just filling in because it's a hobby and they're interested in supporting the arts and being in the facility. It's not anything that they can count on for regular income. I believe we described it in the job announcement as up to 12 hours or 12 to 15 hours a week, but we have yet to hit that, right? Yeah, it's on call.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I don't have a question for you. My question to staff is, what does the $10,000 go towards? Do we know? When we give Robin Hood Festival $10,000, do you know what the cost is used for? I mean, what would they be
Not
paying
directly,
for?
but certainly I can follow up with them. I mean, they use it for marketing, they have band costs. I mean, we have not historically asked for an accounting of how the money's been used.
If I remember correctly from a couple of years ago at budget presentations, one of their primary costs was storage. They have a lot of things that need to be stored for 11 months out of the year. And there was quite an issue when they used to be able to store a lot of their stuff in the city building.
Yes.
And then the city building got torn down, and that was seriously impacting their budget. And of course, keep in mind, it's not just Sherwood Festival, it's also the Christmas Festival
Yeah,
too.
it's
So
both festivals.
there are 2 festivals that the Robin Hood Association helps with us. Yes.
But Council President, I will follow up with Phil and his group to try to get some more details in terms of how they use that money. I think that would be very useful to this committee, so.
Yes.
And they are greatly appreciative that the city's been continuing this. They know that, especially in the past few years when the budget's been tougher in terms of revenues and the economy was in a downturn, they realize that they're the only ones left compared to years ago that are still receiving this from the city. So they are greatly appreciative of it, so. Go ahead.
So if you're going to reach out to the Robin Hood Festival, I would be curious to know, how, I guess the ongoing conversation is that Robin Hood is now self-sustaining. So if we didn't give them the money, they'd run a deficit. That's the communication I've gotten every year from Phil, basically, that they don't break even. And storage is a huge expense, just like for my organization. Also, the city's requiring a $2 million liability policy this year.
Yep.
Which is $1 million more than I currently have, which is costing me another $500 or $600 a year. So I have to come up with that in order to do the show down in the park. And then, of course, they have a lot of security expenses for the show, but, or for the 3 days. But I would be curious to know, are they ever going to be self-sustaining? In that, the organization that I'm privileged to be part of, we survived the recession, we have money in the bank, and we do events year-round. And so sometimes I wonder, if there are other ways we can help them maybe someday, not be, be so worried about counting every penny. I don't know if there are grants, and we've had these discussions before, but they never seem to go anywhere.
So Counselor Henderson, are you suggesting that you would agree that the Budget Committee should consider cutting a portion of the funding for the Robin Hood Festival?
Well, I'm pretty confident that Robin Hood would be shocked if we were to call them up and say, I'm sorry, July 1 is our new fiscal year.
Right.
We're not going to be giving you, we're not going to be a sponsor this year of the Robin Hood Festival.
Yeah, I think.
And that's not something you can recover from in 60 days.
That's right.
But Joe and I have already had this conversation. And what I'd like to do is not only do we give them money, but think of the public works in-kind contribution, police.
Yeah.
All of Craig's staff is way more than $10,000. I just wish we could help them become self-sustaining, because as Joe said, in the past, we used to budget, what was it, 10% of our general fund? And we would spend 3 hours giving away $50,000. And I kid you not.
In there.
Yes. And so we don't do that anymore, thank goodness. But Robin Hood is unique, and I just wish there were ways we could help them that wouldn't make it so they're the only person that's frankly getting a handout from the city in the form of cash.
Well, I think if we're going to do that, it could be, started as a transition plan, not to just turn off the spigot, but there should be at least some kind of a transfer plan or transition plan over a couple of years. But there's a lot of things that we don't know about the Robin Hood Festival that we need to find some responses to so we can plan.
As the new liaison.
I know, I've got a meeting tomorrow night where I'll be talking about.
We had this same conversation a year ago.
I will say that for 5 years, we have been saying we're going to transition them off.
know.
And
Well, I think,
but where's the
the
plan?
problem?
So-
I think the problem with that is that this is not the correct
Venue.
place.
Yeah.
Right.
Budget
Right.
committee is
Yeah.
not the place where we talk about how we can help
Yes.
the Robin Hood Festival with their promotion
fair.
planning.
Mhm,
So I think that this is something that perhaps it could be brought up elsewhere, council,
Mhm.
Robin Hood Association.
After the festival in July, I mean, right
Yes.
now, they are in the midst
Yeah.
of trying
Right.
to.
That's what I was gonna say, is we can't take it from them this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, it's
No,
not, yeah,
yeah,
it's
that
just
doesn't
not
work.
appropriate to be talking about it. I mean, it's appropriate to be talking about it, it's not appropriate to be talking about what
Definitely
we do
think
about it.
future conversation is
So
in order.
again, our discussion then right now is direction that we're giving city staff to provide us for additional information until next week.
Before, the time is, we're getting close to 9:30, and we do need to make a motion to amend page 72 of the budget.
We can do that next week.
Can we do that next week?
That'll be as part of the formal adoption.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
I have another question.
Yes, Linda.
Or I wasn't done. So, we've spent some time talking about the monuments. So the monuments were paid with urban renewal money. Do we have any opportunity, availability to use we have urban renewal money that is unallocated, or allocated, that we can change those priorities, since the council is the board, but I wanted to at least bring it up at budget, that we may not have to use general fund money to fix the monuments, because we could choose to use urban renewal, and I don't know exactly how we would do that, since we don't know how much they're going to cost. But if we took the two that we think are highly dangerous or the most liability for injury or loss of life and made that part of an urban renewal discussion, could we do that? I won't be here next week, but I at least wanted to ask staff if we can find out if that's available. And that seems to make more sense to tap the fund that
Created the problem.
well, yeah, the Carter Burgess created the problem,
Yeah.
but they're in Colorado. And then see if we can, continue to use those reinvestment dollars to fix a problem that we all unilaterally agree is something that needs to be done, instead of just talking about it. And that is something that we don't necessarily have to budget only once a year to do. But you'll have to have that discussion, and the council will have to have the discussion
We
in
will look
June.
into it. I guess I have some hesitations about trying to use urban renewal funds for what probably at this point is a maintenance type operation. I mean, urban renewal is for capital. We spent the capital funds on building something, and now we're going and replacing it there shortly thereafter. So I'm not really sure whether we can actually use urban renewal funds for that. That's kind of a legal question, so we'll look into that in between the meetings.
But we provide facade grants with money that, for an existing building, that's purely just facade. So,
Again, it's
yeah.
it's a
We'll have to ask.
Yeah, well, if at all possible, it'd be at least nice to know.
And I'm thinking that, and I know that, Joe's out of the country, but, or Bob is out of the country, but if we could at least get a rough order of magnitude on, I don't know if we can. Yeah, we'll try. Are there anything else that you'd like to direct staff to try and provide guidance? Well, if you think of it, I'm sure that you can email it, and
What'd you say?
Email me.
Oh, okay.
right. Other than that, I believe we would be in recess. Any objections? We are in recess. See you next week.